to tear down in America is everything we are going to conserve and defend. We are the party of the liberals, the progressives, and the conservatives today. That's who we are. I'll close with this thought. You know, when we say we're defining democracy, we must be very clear that we're not talking about just a static collection of institutions and practices, although it is partly that. It is partly that. But democracy is always an unfinished project. It's always evolving. It's always a rough draft. Democracy is the search for a more perfect union. John Dewey said that the only solution to the ills of democracy is more democracy. What we're suffering from today is not democracy, it's the impediments and the obstacles to it. Republican gerrymandering of our state and federal districts all over America. Republican voter suppression tactics all over America.
The Democratic Party wants to maintain people that have been dead for years on the voter rolls. How do dead people vote? I'd like to know that. Maybe they're resurrected and then they die again, but only during elections.
In our country, Donald Trump is talking about making 2 new states, Panama and Greenland. Well, neither has asked to be states, but we do need 2 new states, Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. We do need 2 new states. We need to pass the John Lewis vote.
You know why that doesn't happen? Because Puerto Rico is blue. D.C. would be blue. And if Puerto Rico should be, why not Guam? I believe that Puerto Rico should be a state. I also believe Guam should be a state. D.C., the center of power, should not have a state, because what was the reason why the United States moved to Washington, D.C.? It used to be in New York, the capital, because they wanted to separate, they wanted to create kind of like a no man's land for the federal government. So they weren't, in theory, they wouldn't be biased. I mean, why not, if that's the case, why not just move DC back to New York? Oh, there's too much money power there. See, there was some wisdom to separate them. DC, if you want to give DC a state, then maybe Washington, DC's federal apparatus needs to move to some sort of no man's land in the middle of Montana that's carved out of Montana. Crazy, crazy.
Because the autocrats, the plutocrats, the oligarchs and the billionaires, the dictators and the despots and the bullies are on the march everywhere. Putin in Russia, Orban in Hungary, Xi in China, Bolsonaro, Erdogan, all of them. And the Democrats are the ones who are going to stand up to all of them for human rights, democracy, and freedom all over the world. I leave you with the thoughts of some of the great democracy champions I've carried in my heart through this turbulent period. First, the founder of our party, Thomas Jefferson, and he lived through a lot of extraordinary events, but one of them was the Alien and Sedition Acts of 1798, a time not unlike our own, of profound anti-immigrant hysteria, political persecution and harassment. And a friend of Jefferson's, John Taylor, wrote in this letter expressing his exasperation and his desperation about what was going on politically. And Jefferson wrote him back a letter. In the letter he said, "A little patience, and the reign of witches shall pass over. their spells dissolve, and the people recovering their true sight restore their government to its true principles. In the meantime, we're suffering all of the horrors and indignities of this period. But he said, if the game runs against us sometimes at home, we must have patience until our luck turns, because this is a game where principles are at stake. A message to you from the founder of our party. Frederick Douglass was born about 25 minutes away from here, the White River Plantation, into slavery. He escaped from slavery to become our great freedom fighter.
The Democratic Party was the party of slavery, not the party of freeing slaves. That was Abraham Lincoln, and that was a Republican.
The B struggle, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has, and it never will. A message to you from a great mayor lord of the 19th century. And I'll leave you finally with the words of the great Tom Paine, who my son Tommy was named after. And Tom Paine got to America in 1774, 2 years before the American Revolution. He fell in love with the promise of America. He said, if this land lives up to its ideals, it will become an asylum to humanity, he said. Not an insane asylum, mind you, but a place of refuge for people seeking freedom from religious and political and economic persecution from all over the world. And then he wrote Common Sense, which ignited the American Revolution. The sixth sense we all have if we're willing to reason together, to speak and listen to each other with reason, without superstition and dogma and what we would call disinformation and propaganda today. And you know, Washington had the troops at Valley Forge reading Common Sense by campfire light to each other because it was so moving. But it was a tough year in 1776. And half the people running around saying, you can't beat the kings and the queens, the monarchs and the lords and the emperors. People for all time have lived under people like Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. That's the fate of humanity. And a lot of people stuck.
You know, the reality of the situation is that the sole elements of Donald Trump are JFK, Ronald Reagan, and George Washington. I'm willing to bet that Raskin did not have a relative that actually was at Valley Forge. I'm pretty sure about that.
And he wrote this beautiful pamphlet called The American Crisis. And I just want to quote this little passage for you. I'm going to update the language so it doesn't offend modern sensibilities at the instruction of Nancy Pelosi, who said Tom Paine was a feminist. That he was, and he wouldn't mind. He was fighting for women's suffrage in the 18th century, just like he was an abolitionist then too. But Paine said this: these are the times that try men and women's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will shrink at this moment from the service of their cause and their country. But everyone that stands with us now will win the love and the favor and the affection of every man and every woman for all time. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered, but we have this saving consolation. The more difficult the struggle, the more glorious in the end will be our victory. Let's make that victory ours, fellow Democrats, in 2026, in 2028. Thank you for all you do.
So did you notice that sounded like a stump speech for a presidential run? So they're already setting in motion to create animosity against the Trump administration, to try to switch seats, to flip seats during the midterm elections in 2026. That's what this is all about.
The Potomac for any of the victims. Now, we have learned within the last hour that more than 40 bodies have been pulled from the Potomac after that mid-air collision between an Army helicopter and an American Airlines flight from Kansas just across the river from Washington, D.C. On board the plane were 60 passengers and 4 crew members, and there were also 3 soldiers on the Black Hawk helicopter. President Donald Trump and the D.C. fire chief have both said that all 67 people aboard both aircraft are presumed dead as recovery efforts do continue there in the Potomac. Again, this is one of the live images that we do have coming in from the cameras in that location. We are going to be checking in with our different Fox affiliates as we learn more about the victims involved in this crash. Now, we also have this.
Okay, so let me just inform the ones that are watching. I have X Spaces open now. So if you want to do a call in, just go to my X channel, click the spaces. It's, Telemetry episode 94, and you can tell me your opinion about, what we're covering today. In addition, you can watch the live stream on Rumble, watch the live stream on YouTube. YouTube has the market telemetry, has the data that's live, with the trades and stuff, and the news feed that's happening for the market. In addition, you can watch both the dashboard version or the full screen version on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Another great way for people to watch my show, and if they don't know, is that if you're watching it on YouTube, you can, especially on a smart TV, you can mirror it onto the TV on the large screen, and seeing the telemetry dashboard on a large screen TV, really, it's really designed for that. It looks pretty cool. Or if you have like Apple TV and you just use the YouTube app and you just bring up the stream on your TV that way, that's another way to do it. But I've created these different modalities so you can get informed and actually watch the market at the same time. So it's dual purpose again. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I put some effort in trying to do these shows, and it's really important that you help with your health, boost up your immune system, slow down the aging process, bring down the inflammation, get healthy. It's a holistic approach. Now, if you follow the holistic approach that I do, most likely you're going to see the same gains and benefits. So some great products that I have that are on the store that I'd like to talk about are resveratrol. Resveratrol is really important to take. It stacks really well with NAC, NAD+, ubiquinol, C60. Resveratrol is an antioxidant, but it also helps to get rid of cells that have gone into senescence. When we get older, cells stop to divide, and sometimes they don't die off, and they just sit there. And sometimes, the processes within the cell start to break down, and it collects toxins and garbage, right, from the cell. And over time, your tissue starts to age when that happens. You want to get rid of those cells. So taking resveratrol will help with that. In addition, resveratrol helps with the mitochondrial health. So if you have better mitochondrial health, you'll have more ATP. And again, this stacks really well with other strong antioxidants. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the resveratrol. It's the bigger the benefit is when you stack it, all right? Especially with C60. Take it every day. I've been taking resveratrol for decades. Olive leaf extract. It's a dual purpose product. It helps with your cardiovascular system and your immune system. How? It brings down inflammation. When you bring down inflammation, you're reducing the chances of plaque buildup, but you're also calming your immune system down. Chronic inflammation is immunosuppressive. A lot of people don't realize that, because chronic inflammation increases your cortisol levels, and cortisol is immunosuppressive. So please go to my store, boost up your immune system, and help with your cardiovascular health by taking olive leaf extract. Olive leaf extract also helps to help with your cholesterol levels. It brings down LDL levels and increases your HDL levels. So you have better total cholesterol. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5. Get the supplements, stack the way I'm telling you, and you're going to see huge benefits. Please go to my store and get the olive leaf extract. All right. What I want to do is play some clips. One clip is from Fox News, Peter Ducey. Let's see what he has to say about Trump.
Great Taps Fly, the world's leading MMP.
Meanwhile, while investigators work to find the cause of the deadly DC crash, President Trump is ordering a review of DEI in aviation, warning it may have played a role in this tragedy.
Peter Ducey is at the White House with all the details on this story. Peter?
Good morning, and President Trump is saying he thinks he inherited a transportation system that was made less safe by the last transportation secretary, Pete Buttigieg.
You know how badly everything's run since he's run this Department of Transportation? He's a disaster. He was a disaster as a mayor. He ran his city into the ground, and he's a disaster now. The Department of Transportation, his government agency charged with regulating civil aviation. Well, he runs it, 45,000 people, and he's run it right into the ground with his diversity.
Buttigieg responded to that, saying, "Despicable. As families grieve, Trump should be leading, not lying. We put safety first, drove down close calls, grew air traffic control, and had zero commercial airline crash fatalities out of millions of flights on our watch." President Trump now oversees the military and the FAA. One of his first acts was to fire and suspend some of the key personnel who helped keep our skies safe. That is something that White House officials dispute. And you look at this full screen, there have been a lot of changes in federal hiring practices from Trump 1 to Biden to now Trump 2. The president is saying, though, he thinks DEI hiring practices prioritize placing unqualified workers in jobs over safety.
We don't even yet know the names of the 67 people who were killed, and you are blaming Democrats and DEI policies and air traffic control. And don't you think you're getting ahead of the investigation right now?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think you have the names of the people, you have the names of the people that are on the plane. You think that's going to make a difference? They are a group of people that have lost their lives. If you want a list of the names, we can give you that. We'll be giving that very soon. In coordination with American Airlines. We're in coordination very strongly, obviously, with the military. But I think that's not a very smart question.
President Trump knows more about the players involved in this mid-air collision than we do. And we just don't know exactly right now what he knows about the players involved that is helping him reach this conclusion that he thinks that DEI practices contributed to what happened. Back to you.
Hey, Peter, were you astounded by the level of communication? I mean, I was blown away.
Yeah, we don't really see the president in the briefing room.
And Cabinet Secretary Sands, Secretary of Transportation, Vice President, NTSB, it was amazing.
Well, yeah, and it took us 3.5 years to get Joe Biden into the briefing room for any reason, and it was after he had already said that he wasn't going to run for anything anymore. But President Trump wants to, and it's not just because this happened pretty much literally in his backyard, like within view of his balcony from the White House residence. He just is showing us that he wants to have his fingerprints on every big national story. And this is something that he and his team, Sean Duffy and Pete Hegseth, their first hours on the job, are going to have to deal with immediately to make people feel safe. And it is a change. I think the way that this used to work for the last couple of years, we would probably get a lot of lower level communication staffers briefing us, doing a telephone background briefing, something on Zoom where we can't show their faces or use their names, but we can say we got information on background. Whereas Trump is doing it essentially upside down. Start with the people at the top. This guy's in charge of the Pentagon. This guy's in charge of the Transportation Department. I am the commander-in-chief. This is what we think. And so, and now they are going to let us know in real time what they're going to do.
We'll let you do a story and actually complete it by 6 o'clock.
Well, yeah, if your job is to cover what the president says, it helps a lot if the president says
something. Thanks, Peter, for bringing that.
Peter.
We appreciate it.
Peter was talking about DEI, and we heard the president saying that might be an issue here. The FAA launched a national outreach program under Obama for DEI, and it included a push to hire workers with severe intellectual disabilities and psychiatric problems. There's also a lawsuit from last year, 2024, that alleged that the FAA turned away nearly 1,000 air traffic controller applicants solely based on race.
That is insane to be low on people at a high impact job and to turn people away.
Go ahead, bro.
I was going to say that Troy Nails was on with you earlier, and he said this about the air traffic controller situation. Keep in mind, the federal government's running the Reagan Airport. Watch.
The DCA, which is the Reagan Airport where this took place, their air traffic control staffing shows that they need 30 personnel to operate that air traffic control tower. It's a very busy airport. They say there are about 19 currently on staff. So we have a staffing issue at the Reagan Airport, DCA. DCA, very busy airport. We have 800 flights inbound and outbound each and every day at
Break free with the new Opera GX, a browser that puts you in control with a brand new design that frees up even more pixels for personalization and an inventory of features to up your game at every level. Like GX Control to help
on and outbound each and every day at Reagan Airport. And overall, I believe our safety record is the gold standard. But when we have an issue like this, it needs to be addressed. There needs to be some oversight from Congress. We need to make sure that if these airports are struggling with air traffic controllers, they bring it to our attention and we can try to encourage more younger people to get into that field.
So, I struggle with this DEI stuff. I covered DEI when I ran campus reform. Maybe it had the original intent was good, but it's gone way too far. I understand organic diversity. I understand that some people at one point in time in history, or maybe today, were denied jobs because they're qualified, because of the race, sexual orientation, or whatever. I understand that. But why are we trying to get people with mental disabilities to work air traffic control? I mean, there is a place for them in society, but a lot of the diversity push just doesn't make sense. It's not a value of diversity in air traffic control. It just doesn't. The one thing that we need to focus on is the person qualified for the job.
Yeah.
Does their diverse background bring them some additional information to the job? But just hiring people to meet different metrics doesn't make any sense to me. I'm sorry.
Right. The last thing I would say reminds me of the story we had the LA fires, where that fire chief was saying, we want people to know that if you're in a fire, there's somebody coming to save you that looks like you. No, I'd like somebody
I just don't want to burn.
Right.
I just want to burn.
I don't want to burn to death.
So,
All right, so NBC has a story, and the headline is, "Fear and chaos grip federal workers as Trump rapidly remakes the government." Donald Trump has said, as you know, we've been covering this, he wants to end the work from home practices. So he offered the deferred resignation, where you get paid through September if you resign by February 6th. There are only 6% of our federal workers that are working full-time in an office. So that's why Donald Trump is doing this. Now you have these Democrats that are saying we're living in fear, where everything's so chaotic. But my question to them is, are you fearful about lower prices? Are you fearful about tax breaks? Are you fearful about not paying tips? Not paying taxes on tips or Social Security checks or on your overtime? Many of you work overtime. Are you fearful that Donald Trump's going to get rid of criminal illegal aliens? Why are you scared?
And they're worried about that. If you're a federal employee, they're worried about their future. Well, because Donald Trump asked Elon Musk to cut $2 trillion out of the budget. They accused Donald Trump of the first 4 years of not cutting like he did. The tax reform, I believe, was working to do that, bring more revenue in, but they never got to the tax cut because of the pandemic. So what he's doing now is to look at the 2.3 million people working for the federal government. They all got emails saying you can quit, we'll give you 6 months, which by the way is way too generous, I think. But come to work, you're fired, or take the 6 months and just write in your subject line, say resigning. So that you should feel fear and loathing if you're not doing a good job. But if you like your job and are doing good at your job, you can keep your job. But this is part of a whole of government push to lean it out and bring our budget in line with $36 trillion in debt. You should not be fearful unless you're coasting. If you're coasting in your job, be fearful. But this is Elon Musk sleeping in the ice now, in the office, on the couch, like he did with Tesla, trying to fix it. He's trying to fix the government the way he did SpaceX.
Well, something is obviously going wrong, Nancy. We just had Americans die because it wasn't properly staffed and they weren't focusing on the right thing. Other agencies are going through something similar. It's just not a harsh job or a deadly job that could cause death. But other harms are happening in the government
It's
currently.
just that we have to figure it all out
Yes.
this way.
You know, the fancy term for this is you have individuals that have elevated to positions that are not qualified through a DEI recruitment structure, and it causes a negative externality in the society. And the degree of the severity depends on what the position is. But the problem here is that it's all about the negative externality. And unfortunately, the Democratic Party has a tendency to not pay attention to externalities, the negative externalities of their policies. All right, this is Fox Business.
Welcome back. The Black Hawk helicopter that collided with a passenger jet near Washington, D.C. may have deviated from its approved flight path. The New York Times is reporting its, quote, final location indicated it was not on its approved route and flying higher above the ground as it traversed the busy airspace. The instructor pilot had 1,000 flying hours and was considered, quote, very experienced, while the co-pilot had 500 flying hours, said to be normal. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth weighed in on this yesterday. Watch.
The military does dangerous things. It does routine things on a regular basis. Tragically, last night, a mistake was made. I think the president is right. There was some sort of an elevation issue that we have immediately begun investigating at the DoD and Army level. Army CID is on the ground investigating. Top-tier aviation assets inside the DoD are investigating, sir, to get to the bottom of it so that it does not happen again, because it's absolutely unacceptable.
Here now is the Panero Group CEO and retired two-star Marine Corps General Arnold Panero. General, thanks very much for being here. Give us your reaction.
Well, Maria, I think obviously the first reaction is just the heartbreak and sorrow over the loss of life. You read these stories about the people that were on the plane, about their loved ones. It's just so heartbreaking, and particularly if the tragedy could have been avoided. I think the Secretary of Defense has put steel on target there. He's not waiting around, certainly not for 18 months for the National Transportation Safety Board to get to the facts and looking into what actually happened. I'd like to make a couple of points, though. You and I have been around a long time, and we know that early reports, including from prestigious print news media, can sometimes not be 100% accurate. So we need to get the facts. Number two, as he indicated, and one thing that nobody's really picked up on, that helicopter was on a continuity of government training flight. This is one of the most sacred and important, highly classified missions of our military, to basically keep our government functioning and operating in extremis. And so they weren't just on a joint flight. And maybe we ought to look at in the interim some restrictions on what can be done on a routine basis. But these Army warrant officers are some of the most experienced and highly trained pilots we have in our military. So I think we take a deep breath and not wait for 18 months. And the other thing I would do, particularly if the reports that one of the most busiest and congested airspaces in the country was understaffed, they need to staff up. And one of the things they could do is, we have military air traffic controllers all over the country. They could be called in to back up the FAA controllers while they build back up. So there's a lot that can be done right now. But before we start doing any finger pointings, let's wait and get all the facts.
Well, I mean, look, these are good ideas as the officials move forward on changing things. But I guess what I'm really getting at is all of this criticism of the FAA and air traffic control in the first place. I mean, we had Mike Boyd on yesterday, an expert in aviation, and he said that there were nearly 1,000 near misses going into this, even before this accident. That the FAA has, inherent bureaucracy. It prevents critical systems upgrades. So what about that? Are we keeping up in terms of the upgrading that needs to be done in such an important role? And if not, why not?
Maria, it's a fundamental problem right now in these areas that are inherently governmental functions that only government can do. Government is too big, too slow, or too costly, and certainly the FAA is not kept up. And that's a legitimate criticism and one that needs to be fixed right away. And this is one of the things that's so encouraging as the incoming team comes in. They're disruptors. They're not going to be business as usual. They want to turn things around. They want to make government more efficient and effective. We need to start with these fundamental, inherently governmental functions that protect the safety of all Americans every day. And certainly the FAA is way behind the power curve.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the FAA apparently has been broken for many years. And Mike Boyd yesterday said that the Biden administration tolerated it and just, you know, didn't do anything about it. But I want to move on to the intelligence part of the news. Trump's director of national intelligence nominee, Tulsi Gabbard, was grilled by Democrats and Republicans yesterday during her Senate confirmation hearing. She was asked her previous remarks on Edward Snowden. Watch this.
You consistently praise the actions of Edward Snowden. Some, I believe, jeopardized the security of our nation and then, in an effort to flaunt that, fled to Russia. You called Edward Snowden, and I quote here, a brave whistleblower. Do you still think Edward Snowden is brave?
Edward Snowden broke the law. I do not agree with or support with all of the information and intelligence that he released, nor the way in which he did it.
If confirmed, would you support or recommend a pardon or any kind of clemency for Edward Snowden?
My responsibility would be to ensure the security of our nation's secrets and would not take actions to advocate for any actions related to Snowden.
General, what is your reaction?
Well, Maria, I was at the Pentagon all day yesterday and most of this week, so I didn't see it in person, but based on the reports and based on the concerns I've heard expressed by both Republicans and Democrats on the committee, her answers on Snowden and also on the Pfizer surveillance, which is absolutely essential to protect our citizens, are very troubling. So I'm very concerned, but I'll tell you, I have immense trust in the chairman of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, Tom Cotton, and I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to what Chairman Cotton recommends in this area. But certainly Snowden had devastating adverse impacts on our ability to protect our citizens and know what our enemies are up to. And we certainly need to continue the Pfizer surveillance also, again, to protect our citizens.
The problem with this whole thing about trying to demonize Snowden is that Snowden was actually showing and how the government, even though they were trying to protect the citizens, were eroding the constitutional freedoms of their citizens and lying to Congress about it. That's what Snowden was showing. He revealed that the NSA and the nefarious activities that they were doing were flying underneath the radar. And then when questioned, the intelligence agencies lied to Congress. So I'm tired of hearing, well, Snowden leaked out information. Well, he leaked out information showing that the government was breaking the law. They were doing things they shouldn't have been doing. But we're protecting the citizens. No. If you try to protect the citizens, you're eroding the constitutional freedoms of the citizens, the citizenry. You don't have safety nor constitutional rights. You don't have either. And I'm pretty sure a famous person said that. And that famous person was Benjamin Franklin. And I'm pretty sure that Benjamin Franklin is a little bit smarter than that dude.
At home. So her answers are very troubling. But again, the chairman of that committee, Tom Cotton, is a no-nonsense person. And he's someone, if he decides that she should be confirmed, if she gets in there and doesn't perform as she should, he will be the first to stand up and say, move on.
All right, so you've got concerns. What about the rest of the cabinet, General? Marco Rubio for Secretary of State, and of course, Kash Patel running the FBI, John Ratcliffe at the CIA. Will this group, do you believe, zero in on the real threats that this country faces, beginning, by the way, with communist China and its constant and consistent undermining of America?
Maria, I'm very confident and I'm very encouraged. Again, as I said, I've been at the Pentagon all week, and I remember when Admiral Hyman Rickover first started the nuclear Navy, and when the Nautilus, first nuclear submarine, the Nautilus got underway, he said, underway on nuclear power. If you go over into the Pentagon today with Secretary Hepkins at the helm, they're underway on nuclear power. Our Defense Department is surging to the borders. They're getting ready to set up a Guantanamo migrant camp. All these things. And so I see that across the board with these common sense people that are coming in. Doug Collins is waiting on the Senate full vote. He's going to get a very strong bipartisan vote. Right for the energy, he's going to get a very strong bipartisan support. A couple of the others will be a little bit closer. But I think bringing this kind of common sense and no business as usual to government is something that's long overdue.
All right, we will leave it there and we'll be watching. General, good to see you, sir. Thank you. General Arnold joining us. And to you. Stay with us.
All right, that was. Let's see, what else? What other news is popping up here? Miles O'Brien's talking here. Okay, all right, we're going to go to CNN really shortly here. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the elderberry zinc lozenges that I have, or the manuka honey lozenges. All right, get a couple bags for your household, or a few bags. Be prepared for the cold season and for the allergy season. The moment you have that irritation, take the lozenges. Make sure you have some at work. Make sure you have some at home. You never know when you're going to start having the irritation, and mitigate that irritation right away and boost up your immune system. What happens is that it will, you're creating the secretions, you're mitigating the irritant, and you're maintaining that mucosal barrier to help with your immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get a couple bags of lozenges. Get it in manuka honey flavor or in elderberry zinc, but they're very high quality lozenges. Get a couple bags for your household or for work, because you never know when you're going to get sick. Let's go to CNN here for a sec.
What is it that brings folks back to our beaches again and again? Stunning beauty, magic moments.
It's a place that so many are asking how this could have happened. Right now is Miles O'Brien, and obviously, Miles, you have spent a career covering this industry, covering tragedies in this industry, and you are a pilot yourself. So this investigation is in its early stages. It's honed in, obviously, on the elevation and the altitude of the helicopter, but we don't know what we don't know right now. What are your leading theories from the information we do have?
Something was happening in that cockpit of that Black Hawk helicopter, which may have distracted the crew, perhaps as part of the training mission. Perhaps they were having difficulty with the night vision goggles. Who knows? The cockpit voice recorder, which I'm pretty certain will be recovered, and the data will come out of it, should shed a lot of light out of what was happening, what distractions might have occurred. It is hard to see moving air traffic at night in a city with all those background lights. But it is still the responsibility of that crew to see and avoid traffic, and obviously that did not happen here.
No, it didn't, and there was just no time. I mean, as you said, the slides weren't deployed. There was no, at that point, you're low enough to the ground, texting. I mean, there was nothing, just silence, and clearly so sudden. President Trump has had blame for this in several quarters. He had referenced DEI initiatives. He also specifically referenced the FAA hiring people with severe disabilities. Let me just play for you exactly what he said, Miles.
The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. Can you imagine?
So Miles, he then went on to specify that one of the disabilities he was referring to is missing extremities. Now, this is something actually you know about. You can speak to personally. You're a licensed pilot. You lost an arm in an accident. So I want to give you a chance to respond to that.
Yeah, number one, Aaron, let's not forget what it must be like to have lost a loved one and hear this whole, literally with your loved one still underwater. Here it turned into this weird political thing. But personally, as someone who was a pilot, lost my arm, and went through the process of getting recertified to fly, I can attest to you that I went through every hoop and got over every bar an able-bodied individual would in order to be recertified to fly. The FAA simply does not forsake safety in order to include disabilities in the system. I am part of the aviation community because I persevered through that, and it's an affront to me and all other disabled people to allow that statement to come into play. So it's unfortunate in the context of a terrible tragedy relative to the tragedy these families face. I guess it's not as big a deal, but it is a gut punch to those of us who are disabled and aviators.
Yeah, and incredible that you're able to speak to that personally. Well, Miles, I appreciate talking to you and thank you very much.
Just a little over a week in his second term in office, President Trump was confronted with this national tragedy. It's a moment when our presidents often unite the nation and console those who are suffering. Here's what we heard from our president yesterday.
I put safety first. Obama, Biden, and the Democrats put policy first. And they put politics at a level that nobody's ever seen, because this was the lowest level. They put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program.
Mr. President, you have today blamed the diversity elements, but then told us that you weren't sure that the controllers made any mistakes. You then said perhaps the helicopter pilots were the ones who made the mistake.
So under investigation.
I understand that. That's why I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity has something to do with this crash.
Because I have common sense, okay? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't.
After he made those remarks in the briefing room, President Trump was asked to clarify his comments, and he was asked if he was planning on visiting the site of the disaster.
Do you have a plan to go visit the site or meet with any of the
I have a plan to visit not the site because what did you tell me? What's the site? The water?
To meet with the first responders down there?
I don't have a plan to do that.
Do you want me to go swimming? Do you want me to go swimming? He asks. Upon hearing about President Trump's comments yesterday, I want to share with you what our CNN aviation correspondent, Pete Montine, had to say about it. And here's why. Pete is a pilot himself. He is someone who loves flying despite knowing just how dangerous it can be. Both of his parents were pilots, and he actually lost his mother in a plane crash. Here's what he said on our air yesterday.
It is just so soon, way too soon, to make any sort of indictment or insinuation that air traffic control was to blame here, that hiring policies were to blame here, that the pilots of the Black Hawk were to blame here. This is something that investigators will have to go through, not only on the scene, and they are there now doing the Lord's work. This is only the precedent. And so for the families that are going through hell right now, and I know this because I've lost my late mother to a plane crash, this made it even more hellish. What was that? I just cannot, I'm sorry to get angry, but what is the point of making some sort of speculative, wide-ranging, rudderless claim about anything about hiring at the FAA?
All right, our panel is here to discuss. Michael Warren, senior editor at the Dispatch, Kendra Barkoff, former press secretary to Joe Biden, and Brad Todd, CNN political commentator and a Republican strategist. Welcome to all of you. Brad Todd, I want to start with you on the president because this is something we have seen from Trump. The word blame kept coming to my mind as I watched that press conference yesterday, because much of why Trump has been so successful as a politician is because of the politics of blame. He blames people, he blames other people, he blames, that's just what he does in situations like this. He levels blame. Pete, I think, said it incredibly well. What is your perspective on how the president handled the moment yesterday, and whether that was the right thing for our country?
Well, Donald Trump's good at a lot of things. One thing he's bad at is being a mourner. Yesterday was the day when the president needed to be a mourner and needed to lead the country in mourning, and he's really bad at that. I think before he went out, he should have gone and watched President Reagan's speech after the Challenger disaster, where Peggy Noonan had written for him a poem, which Reagan knew, about them slipping the surly bonds of earth. The poem's called High Flight. It was a moment for poetry yesterday. There would be plenty of time to argue about the FAA's policies and DEI and other mistakes it's made, but yesterday was definitely not that time. He's just more comfortable in combat and confrontation. I think he takes situations where mourning is in need and tries to shift it out of mourning into a battle that he's more comfortable with. It was the wrong key yesterday.
I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, the lack of compassion, the lack of empathy with him, he had a real opportunity to go out there and to talk about these families who have lost loved ones, and the ability to not have any sort of compassion, to not even say that he was going to go and meet with the families who have lost their loved ones. It is sort of incomprehensible that this is where we are and this is our president. And is it incomprehensible though? I mean, didn't we know going into this that this was what this was going to be like if President Trump was back in the White House? Yes, but also this happened, across the river from where he lives currently in the White House, and it's just it is unbelievable that you can be so tone deaf and not realize, okay, the first thing I should say is something about these lost souls. I think it's worth noting he did at the top of the press conference say that this was a national tragedy, and that he did try to express some semblance of that, but it was also very clear that he had prepared all of this other material and all of the ways in which he was going to blame various things. Michael Warren, it does seem to me, and you already invoked the great Peggy Noonan, who we often read from on the show, and she, I think she wrote this.
Just a reminder for the ones that are watching the live stream, you can join X Spaces on my X channel and ask for the mic, and you can tell me your opinion on what's going on in the news, ask a question, whatever.
They have to get used to the chaos again and ride it. She's talking about Republicans in Washington, tempting the gods of order and steadiness. After 1 week, they concluded the first administration wasn't a nervous breakdown and the second is a recovery. Again, they're on a ship with a captain in an extended manic phase who never settles into a soothing depression.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great writer. And there's 39 years ago this week that the Challenger disaster happened, and that speech really, you saw President rise to the occasion of that. I don't know. I agree with you, Casey. I don't know why we're surprised that Donald Trump, this is not a strength of his to sort of rise to these moments. We saw this in his first term quite a few times. There's a weird phenomenon when you're watching Donald Trump respond to this, where it almost seems like he's not the president in that moment, like he's a commentator, maybe on a show like this.
No, I think he is the president. And not only that, he did show compassion to the families that the family members that lost loved ones on the incident. But he's also taking the opportunity to shine a light on some of the problems that the previous administrations have done that have caused things like this, or creating an environment that it increases the probability of things like this from happening. This is a symptom of a larger issue, and that is you can't keep on thinking that because you want to will it into existence, that incompetent people can do competent jobs, have a competent record of performance. You can't just wish that. And this is the problem with DEI. This is the problem with the whole affirmative action. This is the problem with the whole idea. The United States when it comes to jobs, it's about merit. It's not about the color of your skin. It's not about it. Has nothing to do with that. It's not male, female, whatever. It is. Are you competent to be able to do the job? So he's shining a light on that. What's wrong with that? That's actually what you want a president to do that. Do you want a president only to focus on emotional fallacy? Or do you want a president to actually elevate and elevate the conversation into the root cause? What's the root causes of some of these problems that we're starting to see? Why is the military not as lethal as it used to be? Why is it not as prepared? Why is the BMI, the weight of, let's say, the Navy radically increased? It's not because of muscle, it's because of fat. They're out of shape. There are a lot of soldiers that are out of shape.
Talking about those thoughts as they come to him, and it's just not the place that Americans, need their president to be right now.
Get game day deals on Uber Eats. This week, it's buy one, get one French fries from McDonald's. All season long. Uber Eats.
And we're talking about people being overweight, and then that commercial comes up. It's amazing. All right, we're going to take a look at some other news, breaking news. But before I do that, again, the 4 pillars that I have: neutralize pathogens, bring down free radicals, bring down inflammation, boost up energy levels and metabolism. Those are the 4 pillars of this kind of health protocol. All right. One of the things that I take regularly is Max 35. You can get Max 35 or Max 14. It's 35 ppms. I take a teaspoon a day. I swish it in my mouth and gargle 20, 30 seconds and then swallow. Do that every day. Not feeling well because of the cold season. Take a tablespoon or 2 a day. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Max 35, all right, or the Max 14. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off. And another pillar is to bring down that inflammation, like I said. Now, by bringing down inflammation, you're going to help with your cardiovascular system, but also your immune system, all right? Turmeric. It's an antioxidant, so it's soaking up free radicals, but it brings down pro-inflammatory cytokines. Ashwagandha root brings down elevated cortisol levels and helps to control your blood glucose level. When you stack these together, you're helping your immune system and your cardiovascular system and helping to control sugar levels. Really important. Lignans, you can take separately, but it works better when you stack these together. And this is a powder. You mix it in soft foods like hummus or yogurt. I mix it in hummus. There's a little scooper. You take 1 a day, boost up your immune system, and boost up your endocrine system. How does it work? It's an antioxidant, so it's soaking up free radicals, but it also brings down inflammation. So it's helping with your immune system. You stack these together, and it's a really powerful stack. Lignans, the turmeric, and the ashwagandha. All right. This is a very powerful stack. It's part of it's part of the 4-pillar concept that I have that I'm trying to teach people on how to implement. But turmeric, ashwagandha, lignans, really important for your immune system. Really important to bring down that inflammation. When you stack them and you take them regularly, it's going to help with your cardiovascular system too. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link's in the description of this video and all my videos. Use discount 5, stack these things, and guess what? Your health is going to improve. So let's go to Bloomberg. It looks like they're talking about crypto under the Trump administration.
I think it should be a combination of the SEC and the CFTC, absolutely, depending on which type of asset you're looking at.
All right, Catherine, really appreciated Catherine Dowling, Chief Compliance Officer at Bitwise Asset Management, on this huge shift in the crypto market under President Trump. Nonetheless, though, it feels like the next 24 hours will be dominated by the tariff risk
Yes,
that might come from that administration.
right. That's probably going to be the big issue over the next several days,
Mhm.
maybe for the entire term, because that seems to be a economic policy tool that the president is very comfortable wielding in a variety of different situations. So maybe we'll wake up tomorrow, we'll see a new tariff regime.
I mean, this is a shocker to you, but I'm looking at any exceptions for commodities when it comes to
Yes.
Canada. I know. And I appreciate the fact that President Trump says, well, we have trees here, so we don't need your lumber. But like the manufacturing and the transportation process is set up to get that lumber from Canada. And how do you like replicate that without all of a sudden causing more issues, say, in the housing market?
Yeah, exactly right. So there's the ripple effects. I guess some of them we do know, some of them we don't know.
Mhm.
So we'll see which way the president and his administration has to go moving forward.
For our listeners in the US, reminder, you can listen.
All right, so let's go to another video here. All right. This is talking about the tariffs from the Trump administration. This is
Meanwhile,
MSNBC.
President Donald Trump is threatening to follow through on his campaign promise to impose 25% tariffs on the country's two largest trade partners, our neighbors, Canada and Mexico. In remarks yesterday, Trump said he will be putting the tariffs in place tomorrow, citing illegal immigration, drugs, and trade deficits as the reasons for them. The president, however, did not say whether the tariffs would apply to American imports of Canadian oil. To talk about this, let's now bring in co-anchor of CNBC's The Squawk Box and a New York Times columnist, Andrew Ross Sorkin. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Let's talk tariffs. First of all, remind viewers who's going to pay the price for these tariffs, and then talk to us bigger implications if indeed they go into effect tomorrow.
Look, we're 24 hours out from what could be, frankly, an explosive economic moment in our history. We'll see whether we get there, and we can get into the details of that in just a moment. As you, I think, were trying to allude to there, Mr. Lemire, tariffs, as we discussed repeatedly.
All right, so they're going to try to demonize the whole tariff thing, all right, which I don't think is going to move the markets that much. The S&P 500 is trading at 6,118, so it's moving up. VIX is low; it's at 15.27. So the market has low risk, so it's elevating in terms of equities. The Euro USD is at 1.03, so there's a strengthening of the dollar compared to yesterday. Oil is trading at $72.68 a barrel. Bitcoin is trading at Bitcoin ETF long, BITO, is trading at 25.62. And the USD Japanese yen is trading at 154.86. So the markets aren't showing stress. If it was such a big deal, don't you think that the behavior of the market would show that it's a big deal? It's not a big deal. At least not yet.
Ultimately get borne by American taxpayers. The cost of goods for Americans, at least in the short term, go up. And so the question is, whether he's actually going to go through with this, and if this is some kind of larger negotiation. At this point, we only have 24 hours, though. And so what kind of give can he get either out of Canada or out of Mexico on immigration or any of these other issues, which could at least push out this deadline? And if he doesn't implement these things, is there a bluff being called in all of this? I think everybody is sort of watching and waiting, many in some form of terror, actually, about what all of this means. A fascinating op-ed, by the way, that Larry Summers put out in the Wall Street Journal today, just about the actual demonstrable costs, and so many economists, putting up the red flag saying, if this goes into effect, it is going to create demonstrable economic damage in the United States.
Yeah, Andrew, you raised so many good points there. Certainly, if past is prologue, Trump might even look for a small concession he can spin as a win maybe
And
backing off.
that's very possible.
Yeah.
It's very possible. We're talking about this on Monday and there is no tariff because he's able to say, I got them to do this, this, and this. And the question is this, and this an economic thing? Is it about immigration? Is it about so many other aspects? And that's, you know, we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, we'll of course have complete coverage all weekend long on this. Andrew, let's turn to a couple other topic here. Amazon, which had really curtailed its spending on Twitter/X after Elon Musk's purchase, has now ramped it back up.
You know, we're seeing this as a trend. There's been a great benefit to Elon Musk since the election of Donald Trump, his connection and just relationship, and now that he has an office in the White House, a whole number of companies are obviously doing a lot of things to placate the president, and there is an argument about whether this is an effort to placate Elon Musk in his efforts. By the way, it's not just Amazon, Apple coming back to the platform as well. I'm just
gonna pause and just go on a tangent here. I'm noticing in the news that what's being published is about mutations, about avian flu, and how it can become more human-to-human transmission. All right, so they're, at least in the publications, in the news, not necessarily so much in the scientific publications, but just in the news in general, I'm seeing kind of this push. All right, now when we move into the warm season in the summer, you're going to have more animals that are commingling. You're going to have humans walking around because it's warm out, and there's going to be additional risk. So they're kind of priming. The news is probably is priming this. The question is, will these mutations really take place? And when the sequences, when this really happens and the sequences show that these mutations are really taking place, then we have a problem. But we don't have a problem yet. But the point I'm making is, as a data point, as a metadata analysis, what I'm seeing is that you're starting to see this in the news or mainstream news. Mainstream news are just below mainstream news. European news is saying this kind of thing also. So it's problematic. All right, so that's something to just be aware of. Another thing that's totally unrelated is that DeepSeek potentially could have bought more of its GPUs, its NVIDIA chips, through Singapore. And that perhaps, it's still being investigated, but perhaps what DeepSeek did needed more chips than what they actually stated in the paper. So just keep that in mind.
Question is, are they putting this money in as some kind of political placation, or do they believe that X is a marketplace that can actually help them sell more services for Amazon or more phones for Apple? Historically, Twitter or X was not considered as good a mousetrap for advertisers as what Facebook and Instagram and others were offering. And that's one of the reasons that X struggled, or Twitter struggled, before Elon Musk got there. They tried to improve a lot of the technology, and I think we will now either find out from just an efficacy perspective whether the bang for the buck is there. They argue it is. Elon Musk and Linda Yaccarino, by the way, who used to run advertising at NBC Universal, now runs advertising for X and Elon Musk, and she has been very vocal and outspoken about trying to bring those advertisers back.
All right, CNBC's Andrew Ross Sorkin. I suspect you'll be working this weekend. Andrew, thank you so much.
All right. Let's go back to macro strategist over at Bloomberg here.
Higher. Nothing substantial. But why should the Fed be lowering rates if inflation is steady to potentially moving up? And with inflation could move up even higher. The conversation may turn one day to the Fed raising rates, not lowering rates. So we're still a ways away from that. But it's just not out of the blue. I mean, it's not out of the conversation.
No, and it's in the conversation now, versus 8 months ago when it wasn't. All right, Vince, thanks a lot. Vincent Signorello, Bloomberg macro strategist. Let's get back to earnings. One stock on the move to the upside is Baker Hughes. It is the best performing stock in the energy sector within the S&P. Baker Hughes is an oil services company. It has two main lines. One is literally oil services. So if you're an oil driller, you call Baker to help you drill the oil. The other is industrial and energy technology. That's much more related to sort of the future of what the business will be. It encapsulates LNG export facilities, which they are a huge provider of. And this stock has crushed its competition. You look at a comp chart, Baker Hughes versus say Halliburton and SLB, they crushed it over the last year. They reported earnings last night that beat very high estimates, and yet the stock is still up by about 6%. We're pleased to have the CEO, President, and Chairman Lorenzo Simonelli joining us now. Lorenzo, good to chat with you. I gave you a nice setup there. What do you think that you have that the peers don't?
Say that again, Alex?
What do you have that your other peers don't, in your best estimation?
Well, Alex, first of all, it's great to be with you and very pleased with the results of 2024. And I think it really talks to the portfolio and the capabilities of Baker Hughes. And as you mentioned, we have these two segments, one being oilfield services and equipment, and then the other being industrial and energy technology. And that capability of really being focused on where there's less cyclicality, less volatility. As you look at oilfield services and equipment, we're much more on the production side weighted and looking at the mature asset solutions. And when you look at the industrial energy technology, really on the liquefaction side, the gas infrastructure, and also new energy. And again, we exceeded the guidance for new energy orders intake in 2024. Looking for another robust 2025. And it really comes down to the differentiation in the portfolio. And we're really not just an oilfield services company, we're an industrial energy technology company. And, you know, we've created a portfolio that's unique within the space.
All right, Lorenzo, as I've been telling Alex, who is the true expert here in Bloomberg for energy, I have watched season 1 of Landman, so I now consider myself an oil and gas expert, just putting that in front of you there. Love to get your thoughts, Lorenzo, on the implications of this new administration coming up. How much of a change in policy do you and your peers expect out of a Trump administration?
You know, we've seen administrations in the past and changes, and obviously we had the Trump administration previously as well. As we look at the outlook, again, we think that a number of our customers and EMPs are going to continue to be disciplined, and we're seeing activity levels and production, at least in the US, slightly increasing. As we look at international, again, we see flattish year over year. But again, I think as we look at the macro side, it's over the course of the next few years and the next decade, an increasing demand for energy. And that means it's an all of the above strategy. It's going to be oil, gas, it's going to be more renewables, and we see a good outlook on the macro side for Baker Hughes in that environment.
He does talk about Landman like all the time. So to break that down a little bit, I was talking to Mike Wirth, CEO of Chevron earlier, and basically his theme in the Permian is to produce more, but with less, so less CapEx. It feels like the read-through of that for the oil services business wouldn't be great for you guys. Walk me through what you're seeing from the big oil players.
Again, as I mentioned, the big oil players, they're going to take the opportunity of benefiting from the consolidation and the acreage that they're bringing on. And what Mike is mentioning is really the aspect of doing more with what you have. Mm-hmm. And that's why Baker Hughes is well suited, because we're more on the production side. And again, as you look at our portfolio, greater than 50% is associated with the production. That's the electrical submersible pumps, it's the chemicals, it's the ability to really take more out of the mature assets. And that's been a big focus of Baker Hughes over the course of the last few years. And so as the intensity continues to increase on doing more with less, it actually serves the aspect of our production side and focus that we have on the mature assets.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's kind of what Mike Wirth was saying too, that like the technology just gets so much better that you can actually continue to get more oil, lower the cycle costs, and lower the cycle time. Switching to your IET business, so industrials and energy, a technology business, that's where you house sort of your LNG export facilities. That's where the growth is going to come from. Your numbers for the first quarter and for all of this year are just trouncing estimates. Who's your big customer for this?
Well, we've got the large LNG players, obviously, within North America, and we're looking forward to a number of FIDs taking place in 2025. Overall, globally for LNG, again, we see 100 MTPA of new projects between 24 and 26 over the course of this year. You know, there's still about 80 MTPA to go internationally, as well as also in the US. But it's not just LNG. It's, you know, when you look at gas infrastructure and the associated infrastructure around pipelines being required, compression to be able to move the molecule. The LNG players, Venture Global, which we announced yesterday as well. You've got Cheniere, but you've got the majors when you think of Qatar Gas, as well as ExxonMobil with the projects that they have. So we play across the portfolio with these key customers, but it's not just LNG. You know, 70% of the addressable market opportunity for us in IET over the course of the next few years is outside of LNG, and that's a $140 billion opportunity.
Where is it outside of LNG, and do you anticipate any acquisitions to even beat that up even more?
You know, we're benefiting from the fact that our equipment can be utilized in multiple end applications. So when you go onshore, offshore production, when you look at FPSOs, and we see a consistent theme of 7 to 9 FPSOs on an annual basis. When you look at pipeline infrastructure, you look at downstream, you need pumps, you need valves, you need reciprocating compressors, you need turbines, and increasingly behind the meter solutions as well, distributed power generation. And we've got a line of industrial gas turbines, obviously below 150 megawatt. And when you think of the data center growth that's going to be taking place, it's a large opportunity for us as we go forward.
Does that mean that, Lorenzo, you're going to be able to play in the AI data center rush?
We already are playing in the aspect of providing behind the meter solutions and also distributed power generation with our Nova LT line. And as we're working with a number of hyperscalers, and AI is definitely a theme that we see growing, and the need for data centers growing, and they're going to need short-term solutions for getting the power.
Before I let you go, because you know I'm going to ask it, you got those two huge business lines. Any theories or feelings about a spinoff?
There is a tremendous amount of synergies between the two. And what's great about Baker Hughes is that we can navigate with less cyclicality, less volatility, because it doesn't matter on the pace of the transition. We actually match with the capabilities of oilfield services and equipment and the industrial energy technology. And we actually link the value chain together. And as you think of subsurface knowledge with then being able to move the molecule and do something with the molecule from a compression standpoint, liquefaction, or moving it elsewhere, the two segments work hand in hand together. So we like the portfolio the way it is.
I knew you were going to say that one, Lorenzo.
I'm going to go to a video that was posted about 6 hours ago by Fox News or Fox Business about NPR being defunded, or that it should be defunded. But before I do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, use discount 5, and get the great probiotics that I have. I have it in a veggie cap form and also in a powdered form. I usually take the powdered form because I just mix it with my hummus for lunch and the other powders that I take. It's a great way, but it's up to you. You get a little scooper, you take a scooper a day, mix it with your food, mix it with filtered water or a smoothie. It's up to you. Or take just the veggie cap version, but take a probiotic every day. Why? Taking a probiotic every day is going to improve your gut biome. And when you improve your gut biome, you're going to improve your metabolism, you're going to improve your skin, your hair, your nail health, the health of your liver, and also reduce the chances of depression. Poor gut health is associated with depression. It's not the only reason for depression, but irritability, mood irritability is also associated with poor gut biome. When you have a good gut biome, you're going to be able to think more clearly. You're going to be able to concentrate better, and you're going to be able to sleep better. So a good gut health is a really great place to start if you haven't been healthy. If you're healthy already, great. Make sure that you take a probiotic. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the 2 very high quality probiotics I have. I have it in veggie cap form and also in a powdered form. Please go to my store, use discount 5 to get $5 off. And lastly, before we go to the video, get the collagen that I have, collagen peptide. It has a great amino acid profile that you can take a look at on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use this to help build muscle, help to improve your joint health, to help with your bone health. Take it every day. You get a big scooper. This is about a month's supply or so. Take it every day. You can mix it with soft foods like hummus or yogurt or filtered water. Some people mix it with milk. Some people mix it with a smoothie. So it's up to you on how you want to take it, but take it every day. Do a little bit of resistance training to help with your skeletal muscles, improve your bone density, improve the health of your joints. It's also going to help with your skin health, your hair, your nail health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen peptides. So it's an awesome product. I also have a skincare anti-aging box, beginners and advanced, if you would like to improve your skin and get the collagen on top of it. All of the anti-aging boxes and longevity boxes are designed to be at a lower cost when you compare it to buying the products individually. But it's up to you on how you want to take it. But this works very well. Take it every day. Do some resistance training. That's important for your bones and for your muscles. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. So do you think NPR should be defunded? I think so, because it's too ultra liberal. But let's see what Fox Business has to say.
All right, the president also getting ready to make China pay for its deadly behavior.
And with China, I'm also thinking about something because they're sending fentanyl into our country. And because of that, they're causing us hundreds of thousands of deaths. So China's going to end up paying a tariff also for that. And we're in the process of doing that. We'll make that determination what it's going to be. But China has to stop sending fentanyl into our country and killing our people.
Let's bring in Breitbart economics and finance editor John Carney. 25% tariffs, Canada and Mexico are a-coming. But as Tom Phillipson wrote in the National Review, John, he said, the uncertainty of the execution of tariff threats, that's the feature, not the bug. And it's good for the U.S.
It is indeed. Look, what Donald Trump is going to show is that he is not bluffing when he says he will impose tariffs. Canada and Mexico have both been playing a very interesting game where sometimes they're like, oh, we're going to do it, we're going to comply, but then they do the minimal amount. We're now seeing a panic start to set in because Donald Trump is telling them that tariffs are coming, you're not doing enough. I think they still have a chance to avoid tariffs or to get them removed pretty quickly. Remember what Donald Trump just did with Colombia. He said, you're going to get tariffs. Then he let them back down from their totally reckless, irresponsible plan of not taking back their migrants. I think he will allow Canada and possibly Mexico the same out. If they come around, they will be able to get tariffs removed.
But what do they need to do? Is it ag products? I mean, what is the?
It's not about trade. It is about. It's not fundamentally. He talked about trade right then. I think fundamentally it is about fentanyl coming across the border. It's about illegal immigrants coming across the border. It is about allowing Chinese goods to avoid our tariffs by going through Mexico or through Canada. If they make a concrete pledge, for instance, they were just talking about appointing a border czar. That is a great idea. Give us a point man who we can talk to about the issues. It's very difficult for the U.S. president to be talking to the provincial governors of each of these places. You need somebody, at the point who's somebody like our Treasury Secretary or our now nominated but not yet confirmed Howard Lutnick Commerce Secretary can talk to about these problems. Somebody Kristi Noem can talk to. And I think if they get somebody in place and they make a real commitment to protect the border, then I think the tariffs will come down. Donald Trump, by the way, didn't say exactly what the 25% tariff will be on. It's very possible that it's only on some goods, that he'll exempt things like oil.
Which he said.
Yeah.
He essentially said oil is, as far as I'm concerned, oil has nothing to do with it. Oil is going to have nothing to do with it.
That's right. He wants us to be an energy abundant country. He wants to reward Canada for producing more oil.
Boom, because again, that's the linchpin of
Absolutely.
lowering inflation. I want to move on to this, and it's out of this world. NPR getting owned after fact-checking the president and not their own reporting.
This is classic. In an article discussing the NASA astronauts that have been hanging out in space since June, the headline reads, quote, Trump asks SpaceX to go get 2 stranded ISS, International Space Station, astronauts, adding they're not stranded.
Well, that's strange because on August 24th, they released a story with a headline saying, quote, NASA will bring stranded astronauts back on SpaceX, not Boeing Starliner. We can't take away every dime fast
It's
enough.
amazing how the ultra-lib media, the Democrats, the Trump haters, they always try to publish something that tries to minimize the significance of what Trump wants to do or what Elon Musk wants to do. They always try to demonize them in such a way. When these ultra libs are going to be eating their tail, just like I said in 2023, in the end of 2023, in October, and you're seeing it right now. Trump is chaos. If you go against chaos, it's going to come back and hurt you. It's only strengthening him. Now, the way to fight Trump, the way to weaken Trump is not to do anything. He needs the conflict.
That the taxpayers fund these institutions with.
This is Trump derangement syndrome gone wild. Anything Trump says, they will try to say, no, that's wrong. It's not true. He's out of control. They're not really stranded. Look, they were going up there for a couple weeks. They've been up there for 6 months. I don't know what your definition of stranded is, but that's my definition. If you're stuck in space for half a year, you are stranded. That's
really stranded. And remember, there was the Obama policy that got rid of our ability to go into space. We were sending Russia money to get up into space. They were the only way we could do it. That opened the door. Elon Musk came and saved the day.
That is a perfect point that he's making. One of the biggest fucking failures when it came to the Obama administration is destroying our ability to reach to the stars. Destroying our ability of investing in high technology and in aeronautics. And that we had to rent space, literally, on a Russian vehicle to get to the International Space Station. That should have fucking never have happened. But that does happen when you have a Democrat running the White House. Because Democrats always look down. They look down on the ground. They never reach up to the stars. They're always about social programs that are usually inefficient. Sometimes they're not. So I don't want to paint too broad of a brush here. All right, but there's a tendency for the Democratic Party not to think big. And America has always been about expansion, thinking big, moving to the event horizon of things and being a leader. But under Obama, our aeronautics and our space program was floundering. And it is a shame. It is absolutely an abysmal shame that the United States had to rent space on a Russian vehicle because we couldn't get to the International Space Station. See, this is part of the whole agenda. Weaken the country, weaken the finance of the country, weaken the borders, weaken the currency, get more integrated into the UN, and reduce the prowess of our military. And they use policies like DEI to do that. That's an element. It's not the only element. Another element is that they move our tax dollars into wasteful spending in programs that don't make the society more productive. So literally and figuratively, the Democratic Party is always looking down. Well, the Republican Party, especially the ones that are innovators, are looking up. They're looking up to the future. So if you're looking at someone that is a negative person, usually they're always looking down. You know, they're pessimistic. That's the Democratic Party and their policies. But if you look at someone that is optimistic, they're looking straight ahead at the event horizon, or they're looking up to, you know, and they're seeing a future that's way beyond, you know, our imagination, which is cool. But you have these ultra liberals that want to demonize people that are traversing into the frontier, like Elon Musk. How is it even acceptable to have taxpayer dollars pay a space ride on a Russian vehicle during the Obama administration, but yet demonize anyone that has any positive say on Russia in international affairs? The Democratic Party will. You just saw it during Tulsi Gabbard's hearing. You say anything that might be positive, and you're a Republican, about Russia, you must be a spy. Meanwhile, under the Obama administration, he tanked our aeronautics development. And we had to rent space on a Russian vehicle to get to the International Space Station. Don't you find that that is philosophically inconsistent? Shit.
And now they're going to be able to actually come home.
It's also such a stupid point for them to try to make. So, you know, oh, they're not stranded. You're going to fight over those words. Let's just get our astronauts back home and not try to like own the president by saying they're not stranded. Also, can't you just search within your own website? Don't you know what you printed before? This is crazy that they did this.
No, they don't.
And as you said, we should defund them. Or, you know what, put somebody else in charge of the entire operation. If they want to keep accepting funds from the U.S. taxpayer, they should have a responsible person we can go to.
Thank you, John Cornyn.
All right. Let's go to
Republican chair
DeSantis
of
is
the
speaking.
Senate Health Committee says he is struggling with President Donald Trump.
DeSantis is speaking about illegal immigration right now.
The fight against illegal immigration. I don't think I've seen that memo yet. And so it's really like the fox guarding the hen house. So it's bad decision. They don't have the resources. You have to create a whole new bureaucracy to be all these problems. But they actually, in the bill, they prohibit our state agencies and your local agencies from even talking to ICE without the approval of the Commissioner of Agriculture. So if you want to have panhandle, your police departments, your sheriff's departments, if they're working to bust like some illegal alien gang, they wouldn't be able to turn them over to ICE unless the Commissioner of Agriculture gave them approval. Who the hell do they think they are to say they need a Mother May I from the Commissioner of freaking Agriculture? And so people will say, they'll say, well, why would they do that? It doesn't make sense. Because think about it. What state has done a better job at crisis management, disaster response, emergency response than the state of Florida? Is there a state that's done better? Not even close. So we have agencies that are in all these fights. We have a great record of success in responding to different things. And why would you want to kneecap that? And even if you were serious about it, to create a new set of bureaucracy in the Commissioner of Agriculture obviously doesn't make sense. And the reason they did it, it's not because they're dumb. They knew by doing that, they would stymie enforcement against illegal immigration. They don't want to remove illegal aliens from this state, okay? Some of them want cheap labor for some of these business interests. And here's my problem. So first of all, we did E-Verify a couple years ago. And E-Verify, so private business, you just run them through the computer. You're here lawfully, you'll be hired. If you're not, you can't be hired. That's the law of the land. It's not like we're opposing a new set of laws. So that's the law. And so we've done it. But then so the legislature in this debate, because they want to take E-Verify away from the governor and put it in the Commissioner of Agriculture. Gee, wonder why. But what they tried to say is, oh, the governors, you guys weren't tough enough. You were dropping the ball, this stuff. Well, it turns out the legislature has refused to fund E-Verify the last 2 years. Imagine why they wouldn't want to fund E-Verify. They probably have some supporters that don't want them to do it. Right. But but because they said that, we've now sent out letters to a lot of these businesses that are sometimes suspected of having illegal labor. We've sent it out and we said, hey, some members of the Florida legislature are suggesting that you may be using illegal labor and you're not using E-Verify. They're saying that the ball's been dropped. So we're now going to get confirmation on all these businesses, and we are going to follow up with them to see if they're following the law or not. But these guys deliberately did not want to fund that because they want the policy to be you have illegal workers because it's cheaper for some of their supporters. And here's my problem with that. One, we got to be a rule of law, right? If you want to have foreigners come in, then change the law. Now, I wouldn't support that, but at least we're all on the up and up. Why is it that you have to follow the law, but some of these other guys don't have to follow the law? That doesn't work for me. Doesn't make sense. So I have a problem with this from a rule of law perspective. I also have a problem, though, when you bring in the illegal foreign labor, you're obviously undercutting wages. They say, oh, Americans don't want to do. Americans will do more construction if it pays better. They just want an artificially lower wage. But here's the thing. It's a massive corporate subsidy to them at your expense because guess what? They're paying low wages. You're paying for schooling for the kids. You're paying for medical when they go to the emergency room. And tragically, a lot of people pay when they get hit in like a traffic accident and the illegal doesn't have insurance. So it imposes massive costs on our communities. And a lot of them don't want to acknowledge that, don't want to say they're for that, but they've made policy choices in this bill that would lead us to essentially being a sanctuary state. Because if these guys can't even communicate with ICE without going Mother May I to agriculture, you are handcuffing the people that are out there trying to keep you safe from the scourge of illegal immigration. They also didn't do anything to stop catch and release. My proposals say you get in the drunk driving is something that I talk about a lot because we have a lot of people who've lost loved ones being hit by an illegal alien drunk driver in almost every instance that I know of. It's not the first.
When I was in high school, my math professor for trig and pre-calc, he was hit by a drunk driver during one of the, I think it was during prom. I think it was during prom. But, and he had brain damage. And it was so sad because he was brilliant. He still had his math ability, but when he recovered and he was able to teach the next year, he had a permanent stutter. I don't remember his name, but awesome guy. But, you know, he was affected by a drunk driver. I had a classmate that one of my Harvard classmates, his niece was killed in a drunk driving accident by a drunk driver that hit her car, and she was killed in the accident. So these things happen all the time, you know, and I'll tell you, drunk driving is out of control. And here again is another one of we're going back to what I was saying earlier in the video. We're losing ethics because we don't have this affinity to God, country, and family. When you have an affinity for God, country, and family, are you going to get in a car and actually be, you know, going 80 miles an hour drunk and potentially killing someone? Or when there's a police chase with the drunk driver, that's when it really starts getting scary and people can get killed. It's a real problem in the United States, a real problem. And the core of the problem is poor ethics.
Prevented the election from being infected. Now the bill that they passed doesn't do what needs to be done on voter registration at all. And I think we got to be very, very tough on that. So you have, and then the linchpin of all this is we want a duty for all state and local law enforcement agencies to cooperate and participate with the Trump administration's efforts. That's what they've called for in the executive orders, and we need to step up there and do it. What the legislature did, they do not impose any duties on any agency to be involved in any meaningful way. They did say you got to, at the jails, you got to allow ICE to pick people up. That's already the case in Florida and the vast majority of jurisdictions. And obviously I support if someone's in jail that let ICE come and get them. But that is woefully inadequate for what we really need and what I think the administration's called for. So we need to have that participation, because if you look at the numbers, they've done a lot, but you're talking about like 1,000 arrests a day. I think those will go up, but I mean, if you extrapolate that, that's like 1.5 million over a 4-year period. That ain't gonna be enough. Like Biden let in 10 million on his own, right? So they're gonna do more in the Fed. There's no question, they'll beef it up. But unless you have state and locals assisting and being able to bring illegal aliens for deportation, being able to end, catch, and release, do all these things, none of this stuff's ultimately, the problem's not ultimately going to be solved. So states need to step up, localities need to step up. Now, we're not a sanctuary state. We ban sanctuary cities. So you can't frustrate immigration enforcement in Florida, but most jurisdictions are just like, you know what, let the feds, they don't want to be involved in it at all. And that attitude's not going to cut it, because we're not going to solve the problem if that's the case. So we want the cooperation to be the default standard. We will provide funding, and we understand that we're not going to detract from doing the normal things that these agencies are doing, but we want to supplement that with additional resources and personnel to be able to assist with this very, very important mission. And the legislature's bill not only doesn't do it, but because the ad commissioner has the veto, some of these local agencies, even if you want your local agencies to be doing it, they could say, look, ad commissioner hasn't approved me, you know, we can't be involved in immigration at all. I mean, just think about it. You have a criminal alien running loose on the street. You can't even call ICE without going to the agriculture department. I mean, it's absurd that that would be the case. So all of this is why the people of Florida have really rejected what the legislature did. They tried to pull a fast one on you. In fact, we were down in Palm Beach yesterday. The representative from down in, I think he's in Delray, Mike Caruso, who's a great guy, he voted against it.
Now, just remember, we heard the Democratic convention speech earlier in this segment, you know, earlier in the video, where they were for the people. Are they really for the people, or the powerful interest groups? Because powerful interest groups like Big Ag, they want cheap labor. And guess what? most farms aren't little farms. They're big farms, and they're owned by big conglomerates like Cargill. And that's part of the reason why your food prices are up. It's inflation, but also there are these big ag companies that are controlling the price. And then they get subsidies on top of it. You know, the sugar industry, that's a huge corn industry, the corn lobbying group, huge. But we're all focused on, other lobbying groups, foreign lobbying groups, or the Jewish lobbying group, AIPAC or whatever. No, focus on some of the stuff that's domestically that's going on, and ask the question on why your food is more expensive. And when you dive into that, you're going to notice that a lot of the food that you eat is coming from not little farms, but big farms. And who owns those big farms? And what is the subsidy? When you read the bills and you read these subsidies that are coming from big ag, or subsidies that are for big ag, or for agriculture, how they benefit from it, and how they're creating monopolies. But you'll more worry about AIPAC. The farm lobbying group is more detrimental to the United States than AIPAC. I mean, just wake up. Shit.
Things since sliced bread. Some of these guys were like, had my picture and all their stuff. It's like, so okay, fine. Well, you get in on that, put your money where your mouth is. And I think what we don't, and I totally respect somebody that runs on a different agenda than I've pursued. If we have a Republican that runs on a supposed need to bring in a lot of cheap illegal labor for their donors, if that's what they want to run on and they win and they get in and do that, honestly, what am I going to say? But what I don't want is for people running saying they're putting Floridians first, they're going to stop illegal immigration, they're going to stand with the policies that are strong, and then get in and then do the opposite. That is the problem that we're going to have. So we are going to make sure that we're doing it. But
the reality of this whole illegal immigration is this is modern day slavery. It's modern day slavery promoted by the Democratic Party at this moment in time, which has always been the party of slavery. From their inception, they've been always the party of slavery.
Anything you would do in your life where you had 75 pages and 25 minutes to make an important decision, would anybody think that's acceptable in any aspect of our lives? Of course not. So why not allow this to get public view? Why not have people be able to render their opinions? And I think it was because they knew the opinions were going to be very negative. So they just wanted to ram it through. And here's the thing, a lot of these members, because I've supported a lot of these guys, I've raised resources for them, and there's a lot of good guys, good men and women in there who really want to do the right thing. And so they were put in a really difficult spot because they're being told the bill's doing certain things, but if you actually look under the hood, it's this jalopy. So those members really weren't treated well. And look, I think you guys should talk to your members, House, Senate, in the legislature, tell them what you think on this. But I do think you have people who are who want to do the right thing, who were told that this was doing what people thought that we all wanted, and it just wasn't. And it doesn't excuse it entirely, but I do think there were circumstances where if some of those members were given the option of voting for the strong policies outlined, I think a lot of them would vote for it, 100%.
All right, that is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. He is speaking live.
I agree with him. I agree with him. You know what? You got legislatures at the state level. They're trying to push these Democrat policies to hamstring the Trump administration. That's what's happening. But they're the party of the people. Are they really? Are they really the party of the people? I don't think so. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the structural nanosilver gel. It's a dual purpose product. I have it in 2 different ways of using it. You can use it in the tube form or in the easy to use dispenser form. They're both used the same way. It can help heal your skin. if you have a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn. It can be used as a skincare, a daily skincare. A great way to do it is to put it on your skin at night and then exfoliate in the morning. And it can also be used to mitigate pathogens. So what you do is you put it on your hands, on your, around your mouth, around your eyes, around your ears, around your nose, lightly coat your nostrils. And when you do that, you're creating a barrier. And when you create a barrier, you're improving your immune system. But not just that, you're neutralizing the actual pathogen. So and it stays active for 5.5 hours. Way better than Perel. Way better than Perel. Perel only stays active for about less than 30 seconds, and it cracks your skin because it's alcohol-based. Structural nanosilver gel is a dual-purpose product, and it heals your skin, and it stays active for 5.5 hours. Now, you tell me, which one's better? Once again, DrPaulCottrell tells you how to get through things. Have that in your household, at your work, because you don't know when you need to put stuff on your hands. All right? So trust me on this. There are an awful lot of people in New York that are having a respiratory problem. And it does go away eventually, but many people, it lingers like about a week longer than normal. And there's a lot of phlegm that's tied to it. I'm hearing that people are starting to get sick on the West Coast too. So you know what? Take care of yourself. It's all about boosting your immune system. The more healthy you are and the more prepared you are for if anything that happens, the better you're going to be able to mitigate it. All right. Cardiovascular health and bone health are very important. I have dual purpose product here. The D3 and the K2 used together will help with bone density. If you do some resistance training, take calcium either as a supplement or with milk. I drink milk on a regular basis, so I get my calcium through my milk. But vitamin D3 helps to absorb the calcium. It also is a gene expression cofactor, really important for your cells. D3 also helps to get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis. That's really important, to get rid of cells that just don't function as well, especially if they're infected. D3 is very important to take, all right? In addition, K2, MK7 helps with your bones and your cardiovascular. You take these together, all right? Now, you can stack it also with nattokinase or take nattokinase separately, but nattokinase is a fibrinolytic supplement which breaks up clots, and nattokinase helps to improve your cardiovascular health by bringing down LDL levels and increasing your HDL levels. This is synergistic with the omega-3s. You can stack it with the omega-3s. So, and then obviously, it would be a great stack with K2 and D3. So get healthy, all right? Improve your bone structure, do some resistance training, and also improve your cardiovascular health at the same time. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. What are some of the problems that older people have? They have bone density issues and cardiovascular problems. So don't you think that you should be mitigating that when you're younger, so it's not as bad? And oh, by the way, heart disease and vascular disease starts when you're about in your teens, 15, 16. It starts there. You may not feel it. It may not be symptomatic. It may not be clinically relevant at the time, but it starts when you're 15 or 16 years old. Okay. Let's go to Fox News about the Democrats. No. I want to go to the Hill. They're talking about Tulsi Gabbard on shaky ground here.
Well, it's no secret that President Donald Trump's nominee for Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has many critics.
Their main complaint seems to be centered on a common theme, that she is a, quote, Russian asset or, quote, compromise,
or a sympathizer of former Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad.
She disputed some of these characterizations at her confirmation hearing yesterday. Let's take a look.
Before I close, I want to warn the American people who are watching at home. You may hear lies and smears in this hearing that will challenge my loyalty to and my love for our country. Those who oppose my nomination imply that I am loyal to something or someone other than God, my own conscience, and the Constitution of the United States. Accusing me of being Trump's puppet, Putin's puppet, Assad's puppet, a guru's puppet, Modi's puppet. The fact is, what truly unsettles my political opponents is I refuse to be their puppet. I have no love for Assad or Gaddafi or any dictator. I just hate Al-Qaeda.
Another concern among lawmakers from both sides is her apparent sympathy for Edward Snowden, the man who leaked classified intel over what he thought was a gross surveillance overreach. Here's Senator Michael Bennett, Billing Gabbard on that yesterday.
It's not that what he thought. There's many people in the United States, like half the country or more, that think that it was an overreach by the national security state. He wasn't some sort of like, Rogue One individual. Get real. God. Shit. Snowden is actually a patriot because he shined a light on an illegal surveillance program by the NSA.
Is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
No.
That is not a hard question to answer when the stakes are this high.
Oh, the stakes are this high. The stakes are this high. But us, the deep state that's aligned themselves currently with the rhinos and the Democrats, they're going to demonize anybody that asks questions about the nefarious activities of the NSA and the overblown national security state. Because if you ask that question, if you show evidence that they have done nefarious activities on the citizenry of the United States, then you're going to be demonized. You must be a Russian asset. You must be evil. Perhaps what Orwell was warning us with 1984 is happening today with our national security state. But because no one reads fucking books anymore, no one knows on the warnings of 1984. Or what about the warnings of Ayn Rand with Atlas Shrugged? Oh, no one wants to read a big book anymore because everyone wants to just scroll on TikTok.
Or no, is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
No.
As someone who has worn our uniform in combat, I understand how critical our national security is.
Apparently you don't.
In the wake of Gabbard's hearing and confirmation process, journalist Aaron Mate has written a piece for Real Clear Investigations titled, "The Record Shows Tulsi Gabbard Was Not an Apologist for Russia-Backed Syria." Mate writes, Gabbard's record on Syria and that of the intelligence community she is poised to lead shows that her views are not the fringe position that her detractors claim. Gabbard
It's actually the majority position.
Issued a blanket denial of chemical weapons used by his recently ousted government. Joining us now to dive deeper into Gabbard's record and discuss her confirmation is Aaron Mate himself. Aaron, thank you for joining us today on Rising.
Thanks for having me.
So let's get right into it. She opened up her confirmation hearing, her opening statement there, saying that she is not a puppet for anyone and that these smears are basically designed to cut her down because she's not a puppet for the intelligence community or for members of Congress. What did you make first of her performance in the past day when she was in front of the Senate?
On the positive side, she revealed the truth that has been concealed from the American public for more than a decade. During her opening statement, she read a statement from Jake Sullivan, the recent national security advisor under Joe Biden, that he wrote back in February 2012 to Hillary Clinton about the war in Syria. And what did he say? Al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. And what Sullivan meant was that the U.S. was supporting an insurgency in Syria to overthrow Assad, that Jake Sullivan and his colleagues knew was dominated by Al-Qaeda. And Tulsi Gabbard, when she learned about that, came out against it. And for taking that position, that very lonely position, she's been...
And oh, so you're going against the CIA, and anyone that goes against the CIA is evil. You see what just happened? You're actually seeing the takedown of a nominee because she's calling off the national security state and the nefarious activities that they do. Now, most of the time, the CIA gets things wrong. Most of the time, they make things worse. You know, Bay Pigs. You remember that?
Hillary been smeared as a Russian and Syrian asset. And at a confirmation hearing, she not only read Jake Sullivan's statement, Al-Qaeda's on our side, but she called out that policy of the U.S. arming an Al-Qaeda-dominated insurgency, and no one had a single response to her, because she's right. It's a scandal that 10 years after 9/11, the U.S. decided to partner essentially with Al-Qaeda to help overthrow the government of Bashar al-Assad. And the result is...
It gets even deeper than that. This goes way before 9/11. And not only that, there's some weird stuff going on with the CIA in 9/11. Right up towards and right after, you know, during and after. You know, how do you find passports of terrorists flying on a domestic flight into the World Trade Center? How do they just happen? And they're intact. Don't you find that odd?
Gabbard also said that now Syria is ruled by an offshoot of Al-Qaeda. The new leader, who just declared himself president, Mohammed al-Jawani, is the founding leader of Al-Qaeda in Syria and a former deputy leader of ISIS. And this is a major scandal that Tulsi Gabbard has been challenging. And it was very noteworthy that no one could refute her when she pointed this out. Now, on the issue of Edward Snowden, this was the obsession of many senators who really wanted her to say that Edward Snowden is a traitor. Now, undoubtedly, Edward Snowden, as Tulsi Gabbard said, broke the law. But the disclosures that he put out led to U.S. courts finding that the NSA mass surveillance programs that he exposed are illegal. So yes, he broke the law, but also he revealed illegality. And I wish Tulsi Gabbard had answered the question.
So he's a patriot. He's not a traitor. He's a traitor to the national security state, but the national security state wants to erode your constitution, wants to erode your civil liberties, wants to be able to circumvent the executive branch of government and the legislative branch of government and the judicial branch of government. They want to be their own government, beholden to themselves. Now, who's the traitor? The national security state is the traitor, and they should be hunted down.
She doesn't have to say, you know, I understand if she'd said no, he's not a traitor, that would have maybe set some senators off into such a fury that there's no way she would be confirmed. But she could have said, that's for courts to decide. And she could have pointed out that being a traitor means you betray your country to help another foreign country. That's not what Edward Snowden did. He gave information to journalists who then released, who put out journalism such as Glenn Greenwald that exposed criminal behavior by the government.
What Edward Snowden did is the modern day Pentagon Papers. That's what it was. There were journalists that were trying to show the public that there were some nefarious things going on during the Vietnam era. Now, how is it any different? How is it any different? It's not. The government just though has more means and more power to control you.
Clapper, who Tulsi Gabbard is vying to replace, lied to Congress, and he denied that the U.S. was carrying out that surveillance. So I wish she had said, you know, just answer the question, say that's for courts to decide, because she's not a judge. Edward Snowden can be charged and go before a court, and they can decide if he was a traitor. I don't think there is evidence to support that. But overall, I thought her calling out these intelligence deceptions and the freak out she got from these bipartisan lawmakers for refusing to call Snowden a traitor, for challenging the dirty war in Syria, for raising questions about the U.S. role in fueling the proxy war in Ukraine. I thought that was very admirable.
In relation to the Edward Snowden question, Aaron, I think that, you know, all of our audience will have their own individual views as to whether he's a traitor or not. I surmised from Gabbard's answers that she doesn't think he's a traitor, which is, you know, a legitimate debate to have for sure. And so, to my mind, she was kind of standing up for what she believed, when perhaps the more politically easier course would have been to say that he was a traitor, to shore up Republican support. But on a different issue, as her confirmation
Yeah, because,
process
and the
has
thing
gone
is
on,
as she's willing to stand up for the right thing, don't you want that in government? Or do you want a puppet? Do you want a puppet? Or do you want someone that actually stands up for the Constitution? The Constitution is a really important document. Really important. Probably more important than your life, than anyone's life in this country. No one's life is more important than that document. But we're letting the Democratic Party step all over it. We're letting the Democratic Party shit on it. We're letting the Democratic Party tear it up. And guess what? It's more important than anyone's life. Anyone that's listening, that's from the United States, guess what? The Constitution is more important than your life. It's more important than my life. Why? Because it is a document that is for all and for all generations.
she does seem to have changed her view pretty abruptly on a certain provision of FISA, the surveillance law, Section 702 specifically, where she appears to be a lot more sympathetic to granting the government those powers than she was at a previous point in her life. What did you make of that?
Well, first, on the issue of Edward Snowden, I agree with you. Had she just simply said, yes, Edward Snowden is a traitor, that would make her path to confirmation much easier, because that's what the senators from both parties wanted to hear. But the fact that she refused to tell them what they wanted her to say shows that, as she said in her opening statement, she's not a puppet. She actually wants to stand by her convictions on certain key issues, including what Edward Snowden did, because I think she appreciates the fact that he exposed illegal mass surveillance. So I thought that, I wish she had given an answer that was just more direct and saying that, you know, that's for course to decide. But the fact that she refused to go along with what they wanted her to say, I think is admirable. But you're right. On some other issues, she has abandoned past positions when it comes to 702. Also on the issue of Israel-Palestine, it feels that she was much more fair-minded in some of her past statements when she was running for president in 2019, 2020. Now she's adopted the Trump administration policy of fulsome support for Israel in its mass murder campaign in Gaza, which I find unfortunate. So certainly she's flip-flopped, but that's also what happens in Washington. I'm not going to hold it to a higher standard. Everybody, even someone like Bernie Sanders, who I've long admired, abandons previous positions. So that's just parts of the course. There's a certain game you have to play to get confirmed if you want to be.
So let me get this straight. He's a Bernie bro. He's a Bernie bro. Oh, lovely.
Issues like Edward Snowden, and also on the very explosive issue of Syria chemical weapons allegations, where she's also stood apart in raising serious questions about these claims that the U.S. has lodged against the former Syrian government to take the U.S. off the war, to bomb Syria and impose sanctions. She's raised questions, and she cited a scandal that's been ignored across the media, the OPCW whistleblower scandal, where the world's top chemical weapons watchdog, the OPCW, censored its own investigation into one such incident in Duma in 2018. And brave whistleblowers in the OPCW challenged that cover-up. Tulsi Gabbard has supported them. And at that hearing, when she cited them in response to Senator Mark Kelly completely ignored the issue, because, again, that underscores that these whistleblowers actually are onto something, and therefore he can't contend with their findings.
Aaron, thank you so much for joining us today on Rising, breaking down Tulsi Gabbard's confirmation hearing. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I think that's informative. It's a shame that he's a Bernie bro, but, you know, it can't be perfect, right? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the structural nano silver toothpaste that I have. Get a few tubes of this high-quality toothpaste for your household. It's great. It whitens your teeth, freshens your breath, helps with your gum line, reduces inflammation, and improves your oral hygiene and neutralizes pathogens. All right. When you have good oral hygiene, you're reducing the chances of cardiovascular disease and you're reducing the chances of valvular disease. This is a big problem in the geriatric population. When you get older, bad oral hygiene starts to, cause problems. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get this very high quality toothpaste. It has no fluoride in it. It's the best toothpaste that you're going to be able to get. Get a few tubes for your household, help support your health, your oral hygiene, and the work that I do by going to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Again, discount 5 gives you $5 off. It's all caps. Zeolite, really important to detoxify your body. It removes heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals, including forever chemicals. You can take this every day, or you can just do a detox once or twice a year. Now, the way to do this, if you're taking it every day, is take 2 drops, small drops, underneath your tongue, drink filtered water. Do that every day, year round. Or if you're doing the once or twice a year detox, take 4 or 5 drops, small drops, underneath your tongue, drink the filtered water. All right, and then, do that every day until the bottle's done. Make sure you drink the filtered water. But while you're doing the detox, make sure that you're improving your water supply. That means filter your water and also improve the foods that you're eating. All right, stop eating the processed foods. They have a lot of chemicals in it. And look around in your home and get rid of cleaning supplies that may be harmful for your endocrine system, or paints that are in your garage or in your basement. They eventually build up in the air in your home, and you're breathing them in, and it's causing problems with your health. So, cleaning your environment and being mindful of that exposure is really important. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, help with your endocrine system, help with your immune system, detoxify your body, get the zeolite. This is very high quality to remove heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals, including the forever chemicals. Digestive enzyme complex. We're getting older. You need to reduce the stress on your pancreas. Even if you're healthy, your pancreas health has declined. And your pancreas does a lot of things for your body, including creating the digestive enzymes to be able to break up your food. Digestive enzyme complex are the enzymes that you need to break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. So it reduces the load on your pancreas. You can also use digestive enzyme complex, not just to help with pancreatic health and to be able to absorb nutrients better, but you can use it as a supplement if you're an athlete to help to break down your pre or post workout nutrients. So this is also for athletes. So please go to my store, help with your pancreatic health, and to improve the digestion and absorption of those nutrients. Go to my store and get the digestive enzyme complex. It's something that you should be taking every day. Pancreatic health is super important. You would die if your pancreas wasn't working. Myotrol. Myotrol helps to build muscle and maintain muscle mass and improve mitochondrial health. This stacks really well with gladiator barley. All right. Do some resistance training, and you're going to see strength gains and muscle gains. This is for people that are older, 40 plus, because a lot of people, they start to atrophy, their muscles start to atrophy. So they have problems, gaining muscle mass and whatever. Taking Myotrol will help you build that muscle and maintain that muscle. But if you're an athlete and you are looking for strength gains, taking Myotrol and gladiator barley together is like a super combo to be able to do that. So please go to my store, get the Myotrol. It's for athletes, but also for people that are 40 plus that want to build up some muscle or maintain muscle mass. Because when you start to decline in your muscle mass, you start to age faster. A big part of the problems with people's in one of the texts, we were talking about backs and stuff. Back health is really important when you get older, all right? Now, people can get injured, and that's a whole different ballgame. But just overall health of the back, right, and the fitness of the back, having better musculature for the back is going to improve your posture, right, and allow for the lymphatic system to flow better. When you get older, you start to, you start to shrink, and because bone density starts to decline, and you start to, your spine starts to curve. All right, to reduce that curve, the potentiality of the curvature is to improve your bone structure by doing resistance training and proper supplementation, like D3 and K2, and taking calcium, and doing stretching exercises. Stretching is really important. But not just that, improve your musculature in your back to bring your back more straight and more towards the back, more posterior. Most people, they're lifting weights and they're really focused on just the front. And you're building muscle in just the front, and you're not really spending so much time on the back. And what happens is you're overbuilding your frontal muscles and not enough of your back muscles, and that causes problems. So you want to be balanced for your core. You want to balance your core for the front and the back. And when you improve your back muscles, what's going to happen is that your spine is going to be better supported. So you're going to actually gain some height. And not only that, you're going to actually improve the lymphatic flow. So your lymphatic system will flow better. You're going to have better blood flow between your upper and your lower extremities. And you're reducing the chances of this shrinking and curvature in your geriatric years. So this is part of the reason why resistance training and proper supplementation is really important, but targeted resistance training, all right? Back is really important. And so you want to mitigate some of these problems when you're having back problems and all this stuff, Now, injuries are a different story. Sometimes you have compression of the disc and pinch nerves and all that. That's a whole different ballgame. But the average person, they stop working out when they're about in their 40s and their 50s. They start losing muscle mass. They start losing bone density, and they're going down a problematic road. You can mitigate that by taking Myotrol and working out. So, pay attention to what I'm saying. I just, I said how to get rid of diabetes. I've said on how to get rid of or reduce your chances of cardiovascular disease. I've explained on how to reduce your chances of osteoporosis and lymphatic flow disruption. I mean, just do this, just listen to me, and your health will improve. For sure. But it's a holistic approach. You can't just take Myotrol and just sit on the couch and just watch TV. You take Myotrol and you work out a little bit. You focus on your back muscles, right? And you're going to improve. But the thing is that it's a holistic approach. Diet, exercise, sleep, proper supplementation, filtering your water, mindfulness, right? It's a holistic approach, but it targets most of the aging problems that we have in the United States, and the highest prevalence of disease in the United States is mostly based on lifestyle. All right. With that, let's go to Bloomberg, see what they have to say. This is Balance of Power.
Here at the White House, there's a big connection today between Silicon Valley and our nation's capital. We're going to update what's happening at Reagan National Airport next. Tyler Kendall will join us from the airport, and we'll have the latest on the crash. This is Bloomberg.
All right. They're on commercial break here, so let's find another snippet on the news. News.
Oh, this is interesting. All right, CNN just posted this 36 minutes ago.
A passion and a profession and a large versatile space.
To begin this hour with breaking news minutes ago, CNN confirmed that the FAA has indefinitely shut down the low-altitude helicopter corridor that was in use at the time of Wednesday's mid-air collision that killed 67 people. CNN has exclusively obtained 2 videos that show the crash from angles we have not seen before. They're right here on the screen. You see the Army Black Hawk helicopter on the left, apparently flying right into the path of the American Airlines plane. And there's another video capturing the moment before the impact. The helicopter is traveling over the Potomac River as the plane makes its descent to Reagan National Airport. And some experts are wondering if the Army pilot was confused by the other bright lights and didn't see the approaching plane, perhaps confusing it with another plane. Also this morning, the New York Times is reporting that the Black Hawk may have strayed off course. Quote, the military helicopter appears to have been flying too high outside its approved flight path at the time of the crash, according to 4 people briefed on the matter, but not authorized to speak publicly, end quote. NTSB investigators have recovered both the voice and data recorders from Flight 5342 and hope to have a preliminary report ready within the next 30 days. CNN's Renee Marsh is at Reagan National. Renee, what are we learning about this FAA action to close the helicopter corridor?
Right, Pamela, that is the latest development here as this investigation is underway, and this is quite a significant move. The first significant aviation safety move since this mid-air collision outside of Reagan National Airport concerning the airspace surrounding the airport. Now, this airspace that has been shut down by the FAA is used not only by commercial airliners coming and going from this airport, but also military aircraft as well as law enforcement aircraft. But in light of that mid-air collision, the FAA has made the determination to close traffic to anything except for those commercial aircraft. And you talked about this other new reporting that I'm sure investigators are also going to be looking into, which is whether or not this helicopter left the proper altitude that it should have been. And if this deviation away from the altitude that it should have been at, this Black Hawk, is actually confirmed, it would certainly mean that the pilot of that Black Hawk was not following flight regulations at that time, because these helicopters are supposed to be flying at very specific altitude, 200 feet or less. And so that is certainly something that investigators will be zeroing in on when they retrieve the black box from the Black Hawk helicopter. That has not been retrieved yet, but they have retrieved the black boxes from the commercial passenger plane. They are already starting work on that. It is in their labs. They have opened it and they've begun the process of reviewing the data from those black boxes. We know that investigators say that they are confident, based on the condition of the black boxes from the commercial passenger plane, that they will be able to get data from it. Also, the NTSB is tapping into their expertise across the country. We got word today that they have tapped one of their members from Alaska. They have flown that individual in. He's a former pilot of a Black Hawk helicopter, so tapping into his expertise on that. And of course, another crucial part of this investigation, Pamela, is going to be the air traffic controllers. We do know that the NTSB at this hour, they have not yet had interviews with the air traffic controllers, so that is soon to come. Pamela?
And then there was this near miss the day before the collision between an airplane and helicopter. Tell us about that.
Right, just further highlighting the complicated airspace that is the airspace around Reagan National Airport. It was just the day before this mid-air collision that another passenger plane coming in for a landing had to actually abort landing because another helicopter had come too close into its path. We have the sound from the air traffic control for that incident. Let's take a listen.
Have you traffic the helicopter over Georgetown, northbound?
repeat.
We have an RA with the helicopter traffic below it.
So clearly with this, the incident that is being investigated today, you have that previous incident. It has clearly become evident to investigators that this complicated airspace, something needed to be done more immediately, even though this investigation is ongoing. And Pamela, again, that headline today, the FAA shutting down this airspace around Reagan National Airport to those military helicopters.
Yeah, that's a big development. Renee Marsh, thank you. And our next guest is a former air traffic controller who personally shut down New York City's airspace on 9/11, and he may have been the first person to realize America.
And you know what's amazing is, and maybe I just missed it, and maybe you have seen it, and just put it in the text message if you have. Any reporters asking about drones, or did any official say that they've confirmed that this had nothing to do with drones? I don't know the answer to that. I'm asking the question.
Was under attack that day. Michael McCormick joins us now. Thanks for your time. So as a former air traffic controller, what was your immediate reaction when you learned about this crash and subsequently as more evidence is coming into process?
Pamela, just like the rest of the country, I was absolutely shocked when I learned of this near collision, especially with the loss of life on board both aircraft. This is not something that we would expect to see within the air traffic control community. And my thoughts and prayers go out to the families of the passengers and crew on board both aircraft, and also to the air traffic controllers of Washington National. I'm sure having a very difficult time with them.
My heart feels for them because, I think about that moment when the collision happened and then the air traffic controller had to see the collision and then immediately pivot and deal with all the other planes coming in and redirecting them to the other airports in the area. I mean, talk about true professionalism. But you have to wonder what they're thinking, how they're feeling right now. According to the New York Times, audio recordings reveal that the passenger jet was originally cleared by the control tower for one runway and then was cleared for another runway. What is your assessment of that? And just the timing here of the communication with the helicopter pilot just around 13 seconds before the collision happened?
That is not an unusual maneuver for Washington National Airport. The main runway is what the aircraft was initially sequenced for. The controller made the decision to circle the aircraft to runway 33, and that allows the tower to be able to get more departures off of the main primary runway, while the aircraft was circling to land on the secondary runway. Unfortunately, because of that maneuver, it put American right into the flight path of the helicopter.
And the source told
my grandfather's flown by the Hatter for over 75 years now. He's got so many life experiences that he can share. Finding the exact date.
And the source tells CNN that one controller was working two positions at the time of the crash. I think that for the layperson, you're like, oh my gosh, what? They were working two positions covering the helicopters and planes, but apparently that's common practice. Should it no longer be common practice?
It is a common practice in all air traffic control facilities that you open and close positions based upon the volume and complexity at any given time. That provides maximum flexibility to handle what's going on in a control tower or in any other air traffic control facility. In this instance, it was actually a good thing because now you have one controller who's actually talking to and controlling both of the aircraft. Otherwise, if it was a separate controller, then the two controllers would have to constantly coordinate back and forth about what is happening and what they're choosing to do.
Just taking a step back, I often think about how stressful that job is to be an air traffic controller. Just bring us into what it's like to be one and sort of the daily stress and the pressure that you're under. I mean, I can't even imagine what they're feeling right now. And you heard President Trump talking about it yesterday, not to make this political, but he's blaming DEI policies without having the evidence to support that. And I just want you to tell us from your experience what it's like.
I believe the air traffic control profession is what is known as a meritocracy. And that is only the best can go through the rigorous selection program, the screening program, and then the 1 to 5 year training program prior to receiving their certification. So having gone through that, we are very proud to have professionals who are competent and dedicated to providing the safest service in the world. And as a controller, I think there's nothing more gratifying, more fulfilling than being able to provide that service to our country. And there is no stress. When you enjoy your profession, you do not feel stressed. You deal with the responsibilities. You compartmentalize, as in the case of when this accident occurred, the controller immediately moved to where the priorities were. And that is air traffic control.
It's just remarkable. It really is. Michael McCormick, thank you.
All righty.
Let Paris Baguette make your Valentine's Day extra sweet with an
Let's
extra.
go to Bloomberg here. They're talking to someone that's someone that's experiencing this kind of crash situation here.
So how are they treated and where do they go?
Well, there's an NTSB lab, actually, a data recorder and voice recorder lab about a mile from the accident site in this case. And I believe they'll also be able to read the military recorder, which is a much newer device than the American Airlines aircraft had. But they first of all, they download the data, excuse me. And then they, when it comes to the voice recorder, of course, you want people that knew the deceased to be in the room. There's really not a lot of question as to who's speaking, but you want people that knew those people to be present. So they'll listen to the voice recorder with people that are familiar with the individuals, and that'll take some time because they want to get the transcript absolutely correct, and everybody's got to agree that's actually the words that were said. This is why the NTSB takes its time releasing this information. The data recorder, of course, is all electronic. It's probably going to take days to make sure that it's correct. And of course, we've got two vehicles here, the helicopter and the airliner. So again, a lot of elbow work in the NTSB lab, like I said, which is a mile from the accident site.
Fascinating. If I'm understanding you correctly, though, the voice recorder, knowing that they were about 300-400 feet off the ground, and this was very, very quick in the way that it happened, the voice recorder is what's going to probably provide more insight than the data. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, what I've said in my books is that the data recorder normally tells you what happened. Listening to the voice recorder, even things like the voice inflections give you a lot of information about what might have been going on in the heads and minds of the pilots. I'm an aviation psychologist. Things like speaking mannerisms, and of course, as we get excited, our voice goes up in pitch. So those are the kind of very subtle clues that the investigators will be listening to. And of course, the other thing they'll do, particularly with the helicopter, is create an out-of-cockpit view. It's called an oculometric study. So you know from each pilot's viewpoint if this American airliner was obstructed by structure like the door frames and so on. So again, a lot of forensic work needs to be done, and the NTSB is going to be very, very careful and very meticulous about examining things like this out-of-cockpit view, voice inflections, and of course, obviously the electronic data provided by the recorders and the radar. So this has all got to be correlated and validated before they're going to make any pronouncements. So I can speculate, as long as your listeners know that this is only speculation, but the process is very arduous and very demanding, and it is a team process. The Army will be there, the air traffic controller unions, the pilot unions, everybody works together on this, even though the NTSB is leading the investigation. There's a lot of, they call them parties to the investigation, and they all get to review the data and make sure it is as advertised.
Doctor, I've only got about a minute left. I don't want to have to cut you off, but I've never talked to an aviation psychologist before. Would wearing night vision goggles while flying a Black Hawk helicopter increase the stress load on the pilot?
Particularly in this environment, yes.
Well, that gets right to it.
Narrow field of view, and depth perception is always not always the greatest. So now remember that pilot, she's going for her annual check ride, which requires her to demonstrate competence in NVG, night vision goggles. So it may well be that they were forced to use those devices to complete her annual check ride. I don't know, of course, the instructor was more experienced. He may have been the one on the radio that said, "We see the American airliner." All of that's got to be correlated.
They got to go.
NBC
Stop talking.
challenging. Thank you.
Doctor, you got to come back. Alan Deal, former NTSB. We bring you right to the source here on Balance of Power. I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. We'll assemble our panel next. Rick and Jeannie on the way.
Aye, Rick and Jeannie, the geniuses.
God, those two clowns.
All right. Rick and Jeannie. Oh, let's go to Fox Business here about Canada.
Jason Chaffetz with her this morning. Everybody seems to be caving to Trump, except to Canada, which now says, hey, you impose those tariffs and we're going to respond forcefully.
Yeah, if they didn't learn a lesson of the Colombia lesson, then they ought to pay attention. Like, what is Donald Trump fighting for? He's fighting for America. He's fighting for the United States. He's fighting for equality, essentially. Don't run roughshod over the United States. Don't split us in two. Treat everybody the same, and you will be just fine in the United States. But if you're going to take advantage of people, if you're going to suppress conservatives or Republicans, if you're going to go after people, guess what? Life's going to be difficult for you. Treat us fairly, treat us equitably, and you'll be just fine.
But it's all negotiation, really.
Oh, well, look, I mean, he carries the biggest stick.
Yeah.
He does know how to negotiate, but he's right, and he has the support and the mandate of the American people. That's the most important thing.
There's breaking news here. The tariffs on Canada may be delayed. It looks like the Mexico-Canada tariffs will start March 1st, not February 1st.
You're right. Would be afraid of Kamala Harris. Donald Trump? Yeah, he's probably willing to go to the mat and make your life very difficult.
Let's see. We'll find out today. Because the Canadians have said, we're going to do that. You impose those tariffs, we're going to do this, and you're not going to like it. Next, the ball is now in Trump's court. What are you going to do?
Yeah, that's right. Saturday, those tariffs are coming. What are we trying to do? Protect fentanyl and illegal immigration. That seems like something we should be doing in the United States of America.
Next one. It's for you again. We have some federal employees claiming that they are gripped by fear and chaos after the flood of executive orders from Trump. This is an NBC report, by the way. Is it productive to have government workers in fear and hiding?
Well, he's given them the option to leave. He's going to give them an 8-month severance if they don't want to come to work. Is it too much to say you work for the federal government, you need to come into work and actually do? What, we have 6% of these buildings that are occupied? It's very reasonable. We're paying them these salaries. They need to come to work, and if it's too much for them, then they can quit and go find another job.
That is one of the most popular programs that I've seen President Trump come out with.
It's reasonable. It's common sense.
Government workers who refuse to go to the office are not going to be popular. I think that's a winning thing for Trump. He's going to win on that one.
Oh, absolutely. And look, if you don't like it, quit.
All right, the markets are moving here. So we have the equity market for the S&P 500 trading at 6,115. VIX has gone down. It's at 14.99. Euro USD is trading at 1.04. So it's been moving upward. Oil is trading at $72.2 a barrel. BITO, Bitcoin long ETF, is trading at 25.4, and the USD Japanese yen is trading at 154.8. All right, let's see here. Yeah, Bloomberg hasn't cycled in yet. All right, let me just plug one supplement before Bloomberg comes back. They're probably going to talk about the delay in the tariffs. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. NAC, I added this to my protocol, my daily protocol. Why? Because it boosts up glutathione levels. Boosting up your glutathione levels is a great way to soak up additional free radicals. It's synergistic with C60. C60 soaks up free radicals one way. NAC soaks up free radicals through the glutathione pathway. Taking the barley, either heirloom barley or the gladiator barley, soaks up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. So different ways to soak up the free radicals is really important for you to reduce the stress in the cell and to slow down the aging process. So taking NAC is really important, boost up those glutathione levels. NAC also helps to detoxify your liver and your kidney, and NAC helps to calm down the central nervous system. Please go to my store and get the NAC. All right, hopefully Bloomberg is cycling in here.
Index, which tracks changes in wages and employee benefits, registered the smallest year-over-year increase in more than 3 years. Smaller wage gains will help limit the cost of doing business and perhaps dampen inflation, which remains above the Federal Reserve's target. Government data set for next week will offer further insights into the direction of America's labor market, including next Friday's monthly payroll data. Benito, Judice, Bloomberg Radio.
Walgreens Boots Alliance is suspending the quarterly dividend it has paid for the last 92 years in a bid to conserve cash as the troubled pharmacy chain attempts to revive the business. Shares of Walgreens Boots Alliance, ticker WBA, they are plunging now by 10.8%. Rival CVS up by 0.6%. Again, recapping S&P 500 index.
Yeah, Bitcoin is trading at about 104,000. Almost 105,000.
Your host here is Joe Matthew.
All right, thank you to my friend in New York, Charlie Pellet, watching Wall Street for us every day here on the fastest show in politics. Yes, I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. We'll assemble our panel in a moment here. A little lesson in journalism semantics. The writing of headlines has so much to do with the way we interpret stories. It's the same story, just two different angles. Think of the way Charlie just talked about this, the tariffs on Canada and Mexico. You take a look at the Reuters headline. They had broken this story a little while ago. Trump tariffs on Canada, Mexico to start March 1. Implementation. You look at the Bloomberg headline here.
Liberal Bloomberg.
Is everything? Canada and Mexico FX climb on Trump tariff news. Stocks end the week on a positive note as tariffs are delayed. Because remember, February 1st was the original deadline here, and now we're hearing it's going to be March 1st. So yeah, they're coming, but I guess a little later than expected. Donald Trump likely to talk about this a bit later, and by the way, we'll have a White House press briefing, they tell us, next hour. We'll see if the press secretary...
He's going to dominate the news. Woo!
We've been dancing around this for days. Donald Trump suggesting the 25% tariffs are coming on Canada and Mexico. It's just a question of when and what exactly they would apply to, as he made the point again yesterday. We don't need what they have. Listen.
Mexico and Canada have never been good to us on trade. They treated us very unfairly on trade. And we will be able to make that up very quickly because we don't need the products that they have. We have all the oil you need. We have all the trees you need, meaning the lumber.
We have all the trees you need. As we assemble our political panel. Bloomberg Politics contributors Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis. He is partner at Stone Court Capital and Republican strategist. Jeannie is our Democratic analyst and, of course, a political science professor at Iona University. So here we go, Rick. They're finally taking effect. Apparently, they're going to come a month late, or will they? Is this just the latest gambit, the latest card to throw down on the table by President Trump?
Well, we know there are strings attached. We know he wants to see efforts on the part of both of these governments to stem the flow of fentanyl into our border, through our borders. And we know there's an immigration tie to it. We want to see them stop the unwanted immigration across the border. So maybe if there are active efforts on the part of Mexico and Canada to address those issues with the president, maybe he'll change his mind. We know that these are both economically motivated. Donald Trump spends a lot of time talking about how we're taken advantage of financially by our trading partners. But we also know that it's a policy approach, a way to get leverage to negotiate what else he wants from a public policy point of view. So I don't think we really know what the priorities are. And the problem is these governments aren't going to know what the priorities are. They're guessing just like we are. And so how they react, whether they put up counter tariffs, whether they get into a war with us on tariffs, is going to be seen probably not until these go into effect, but maybe immediately after the president makes his announcement.
So, Jeannie, which headline are you following here? The tariffs are coming, or, hey, we're going to give you another month before we talk about tariffs so you can help to clean up your act at the border?
I'm listening to the Bloomberg one, of course, Joe Matthew. Why would I go elsewhere? And I do think the month extension, if you will, is critically important, because I think it speaks to the fact that there is negotiation going on. Donald Trump has been very clear. He won the election in 2024 based on two things: the border and the price of groceries. And both of these countries can, if he's able to negotiate with them, help him achieve or move forward in both of those areas. He cannot deport illegals to the extent he wants to unless countries are willing to take them. Does he strike a deal with, say, Mexico in that regard? Is he able to negotiate so that their economy and what they can do to help in terms of our prices? That's what he's watching. And so this is, I think, a very good sign. And of course, there is the reality that most economists have said, you raise tariffs the amount that you have threatened, and you endanger a strong U.S. economy. He knows that as well. So this extra month is critically important.
Going to be sitting down with Jensen Huang today, Rick Davis, the CEO of NVIDIA. I don't know if we're saving the best for last year, but this is like the godfather of AI, right? He was not out there with Sam Altman and Larry Ellison last week when the Stargate concept was rolled out. And it follows this whole DeepSeek story that we talked about so much on Monday, whether the Chinese had caught up or even surpassed the US with a cheaper, more efficient solution. It turns out that DeepSeek basically bought NVIDIA semiconductors illegally through a third party in Singapore. I just find it interesting, the confluence of headlines all hitting at the same time as Donald Trump finally sits down with Jensen Huang. What do you think the products of their conversation will be?
Well, I'm pretty confident that it will include what kind of steps we should be taking to ensure that these advanced microchips don't make their way to China. Because if they're using them in projects like what you described, they're also using them for military purposes. And if they can get them for a supercomputer, they can get them for other more nefarious purposes. And so I have absolutely no doubt there's going to be a reprisal of the Biden administration sanctions against China for using these chips, more bans that the president can put in place to tighten any particular hold, maybe even secondary sanctions for countries that are allowing export of these things into the Chinese mainland. So there's a lot in this category to talk to Jensen Huang about. And then you can get into the whole, why are we looking like we're less competitive to the Chinese on the AI race? And then what do you need when it comes to keeping this industry growing the way it has? Do you need energy? Do you need more systems to transmit. You need infrastructure that doesn't currently exist.
You know what we need in America? Engineers and less talking heads like Rick Davis from Stone Court Capital LP. These money managers are a bunch of clowns.
To that debate right now than Jensen Huang.
But a tough week for NVIDIA shares, thanks to DeepSeek. They're up a bit right now, only about a quarter, about $125 a share here. Jeannie, if you get Jensen Huang, I don't know if he's going to wear the leather jacket or if he actually shows up in a suit, but Donald Trump gets Jensen Huang in the building. He's going to get him in front of cameras, right? Are we going to see these two guys walk into the briefing room an hour from now?
Oh, I really hope so. And let's go with the leather jacket. I think in honor, Joe, you should put yours on as well if you have one. I don't know.
Yes.
I do hope they come out and talk. I mean, one thing you have to give Donald Trump credit for is that he likes to talk, and he likes to talk to the press as much as he likes to lambaste them. So I do think we may get a conversation. I also think there are so many questions to be asked about what happened with this DeepSeek. I will just tell you that I know a lot of young people who, when the news came out, went and signed up, and there is an entire school of thought which asks the question, were they really able to deliver in the way that we were told or they said they could, or was this just an attempt to try to get people to sign up, to try to get access to their emails, to their location services? So there's an awful lot here in terms of how even the media reported on this, and then how the markets and all of us reacted to it. And Donald Trump and, quite frankly, the US Congress are going to have to figure out how they respond and keep our data and our nation secure in this regard. And of course, this came, just a few days, a few hours after Donald Trump said, we're entering a golden age, and committed $500 billion to an AI race. And now China is saying that they can, compete with us, $5-6 million. So an awful lot to discuss, and we do need answers, particularly on the privacy and security front.
Well, this is going to be quite a mind meld, and it's an interesting way to end the second week here, Rick. A lot of ink is being spilled on the contrast between the first and the second week of Donald Trump's term. Can you imagine this? Forget the first year, forget the first 100 days. We're now trying to diagnose the first 2 weeks of a presidential term, and it has been a doozy. We've lived through it together. People are exhausted, and the tone between last week and this week has been strikingly different. Certainly when we think about the comments we heard about the air crash yesterday, some of the other...
This just proving my point. This year is going to be 10 years wrapped into one. Trust me on this.
Yeah, I'm not really buying tone shift. Remember, in his inaugural address, he went after DEI. He went after all the usual suspects. We were shocked by how this was, a classic Trump campaign speech. And then the talk he gave right afterwards, was even darker and more foreboding and rambling. And that's what we saw in the press conference yesterday related to the crisis on the Potomac. He turned a crisis into total chaos. He started speculating on, how it happened, what happened, and who's to blame, and, blaming DEI for this, just like he blamed DEI on the California fires, right? And so I think this is going to be what we're in for the long haul. You get the good with the bad. And so like today, we're talking about tariffs. Speculation was announcement today, implementation right away. Now implementation maybe a month from now. Not exactly sure what that policy is going to be. So I think it's just buckle your seatbelt. It's going to be a wild ride for the next 4 years.
What do you think about this, Jeannie? A week ago today, Donald Trump was hugging Gavin Newsom on the tarmac. And look, Rick is right. He talked about DEI. He talked about the valve. He talked about the Delta smelt. But for some people that looked and felt different yesterday, there was an emergence of anger in his voice. Maybe we're making something out of thin air. You tell me.
I think of that old Chinese proverb, which says, the fool looks at the finger. We keep getting pointed to DEI. And that has been a very popular foil for the Trump campaign, and he's taken it into the White House. But the reality is, for all the noise about DEI, the president 2 weeks in and 4 years in is going to be judged by what he does to prices in the economy and to U.S. security. That is what people elected him for, and they did so in some cases holding their nose about all of this noise and the finger pointing. And so, you know, I think he does do that, and he does it on purpose, but we should not be distracted by that, because we have a president who now has the lowest approval rating of any president to come into office since 1953, and a consumer sentiment that is 4 points down from December. That's what he cares about, and that's what we should care about. And all of his noise about everything else, I think we should try to put aside. It is troubling, and I said so yesterday, when you're pulling bodies out of a river, that you're talking about DEI and who to blame, but nobody can be surprised, because that is Donald Trump. Nobody can shift from mourning to blaming quite as quickly as Donald Trump. But that is what people, at least half of the country, voted for.
Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis make up our signature panel, and you can see why. The fool looks at the finger that points to the sky. They'll be back in our second hour here on the fastest show in politics. I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. Katie Lyons is on the way in, along with our global television audience on Bloomberg.
Let's see, another interesting. Trump administration's immigration raids spark fear in church communities.
March 15th, 1939. German troops invade Czechoslovakia.
Joining us now, Sister Norma Pimentel, Executive Director of the Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley. Sister, it's always a pleasure seeing you. You've been serving the RGV area for 21 years. I've been down there with you probably for as many years as you've been there to see how you deal with the ebb and flow of migration. How are things today, Sister?
Hello, Jose. It's good to see you again. And yes, things have changed somewhat, as we all know. You know, the number of people that are actually entering the country has almost completely almost stopped. You know, even with the previous administration, the numbers had been very low for several months now. You know, the previous administration has put great restrictions and deportation proceedings for many folks who entered between ports of entry, you know, and kind of encourage people to do it properly, orderly through the port of entry, and that is not the case anymore. So we're seeing, you know, we meet every week with Border Patrol just to keep us updated, and numbers are extremely low, as far almost to the single digits that we're seeing on a daily basis that are being processed or that are brought to us either by ICE or by Border Patrol, you know, and so that's how we see things today, you know, and for sure, I think that you know, as far as respect to our churches, thank God that is not happening here in the Rio Grande Valley. We have not seen that. Border Patrol has committed themselves that they would not do that. They would respect those spaces, and so I'm very pleased to hear that from our partners that we work with very closely. And so the only concern that I see, Jose, is that many people from the valley, they are stating that they're being stopped and asked for their proof of their citizenship, you know, and so that's concerning, you know, people that we know, our neighbors, our friends, people, co-workers that are now very worried that this is starting to happen, you know.
Yeah, and when we were hearing Secretary of Defense talk about, you know, establishing Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, the U.S. naval base there, for just the criminals of criminals, but if you're getting stopped in Harlingen or McAllen or anywhere just because you're driving, it seems as though there's a huge difference between that. I'm just wondering, Sister, what is it that Catholic Charities, and I'm kind of asking, obviously not for myself because I just know so well how much you and Catholic Charities
does for people, but what does Catholic Charities and what does the area that you represent do?
You know, Jose, Catholic Charities is the cerebral arm of the Catholic Church. So what we do is reach out to the community and work with our partners and everyone to come together as one. You know, los sumamos, you know, we come together to help one another to make sure that if we see somebody in distress, somebody in need, somebody vulnerable, we can come together, respond to that reality. We see somebody hungry, we try to make sure that we care for that person. And so our response to the immigrants that we saw in that community, that's exactly what the church did. You know, reach out with others to make sure that these families were protected, were safe, could eat. You know, we should never deny food or safe space for somebody who needs to rest, who needs to see a doctor and things like that. So the church has always been present here in the Valley for all our families locally, and also for anyone who we find in a community that needs help. And it's something beautiful that, especially my Bishop Flores, you know, he always says, you know, the people of the Valley son gente de un gran corazón. And to tell the truth, you know, lo son, ¿verdad? Y por eso es que por eso podemos ayudar, porque we're here to make sure we're here for one another, you know. And so I'm very appreciative for the great support we get from the community and from everyone, and even for the past couple of years from the federal government that says we want to help, we want to make sure that your response, humanitarian response, is there. And so I'm very grateful for that, and if that's possible, that's good, because if somebody's hurting, it is our responsibility to do something about it, to make sure that they're safe, that they're cared for, that they can eat, they can rest, you know, and that they're not taken advantage of by those that want to hurt them, you know.
Discover your Acura at Paragon Acura. Plus, at Paragon Acura, we offer free pickup and delivery for all your sales and service needs. Come lease a 2025 Acura RDX for $399 per month. The search is over. Visit us today at Paragon Acura.
All right, let's see here. What's going on with the next?
Wait!
Hold on. I'm putting it on speaker. It's there. Let's see here.
Thanks for China and the iPhone. On the conference call, Apple said sales will grow by a percentage in the low to mid single digits. Again, Apple right now up by 0.3%. Intel reported better than projected fourth quarter revenue, while the semiconductor maker cautioned that its push to become more competitive is still a work in progress. Intel right now down 0.4%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now, wherever you get your podcasts. Balance of Power continues. Back we go to Washington. Once again, your hosts, Joe Matthew and Daily Lives.
All right, Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. Here in Washington, we have questions specifically about when exactly tariffs are supposed to go into place against the U.S.'s two largest trading partners and two neighbors to the north and south. Canada and Mexico, 25% apparently is the level. It's just a question of when. As Reuters is now reporting, it's March 1st that these will go into effect, but the president yesterday said February 1st as he explained his justification from the White House.
We'll be announcing the tariffs on Canada and Mexico for a number of reasons. The people that have poured into our country, the drugs, fentanyl, and everything else, the massive subsidies that we're giving to Canada and to Mexico in the form of deficits. And I'll be putting the tariff of 25% on Canada and separately 25% on Mexico. And we will really have to do that because we have very big deficits with those countries. Those tariffs may or may not rise with time.
So this is an interesting moment, and we are expecting to hear from the White House momentarily. The press secretary is going to be coming out in a couple of minutes here for a White House press briefing. We don't know if we're going to be seeing Donald Trump as part of this, but I'll remind everyone, Kaylee, this is not just any old day at the White House. Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, is paying a visit to Donald Trump, and it strikes me that Donald Trump would not miss this opportunity to get some camera time, to get some time, maybe answering questions with reporters with one of the most seminal names in high tech.
Well, and it does beg the question as to whether or not we'll be hearing about potential tariffs on China too, because the president did tease that yesterday. He didn't suggest that it necessarily was the same timeline as what he's thinking about for Canada and Mexico, but as he cites fentanyl issues coming over the borders, he keeps noting that a lot of that is originating in China and that tariffs could go into effect as well. And it's not just tariffs we're thinking about in terms of economic retaliation or restraints on China, but export controls as well, as was highlighted with the DeepSeek episode earlier this week, and the idea that they're somehow getting access to NVIDIA chips, whether it's through an intermediary perhaps, or just finding a loophole through the existing export.
Yeah, that's a fascinating story that they somehow got these NVIDIA GPUs through a third party in Singapore. Donald Trump will be able to speak directly with Jensen Huang about this.
Yeah.
And when we consider the implementation of tariffs, that may not be the end of the story. The Wall Street Journal has an interesting take today on several off-ramps being considered by the White House right now that would turn universal tariffs into targeted tariffs. If we start to see progress on some of the issues, as you mentioned, fentanyl, for instance, maybe those tariffs look a little bit different a couple of weeks from now. There's a live view of the White House press briefing room now. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt hit the podium. Let's put a mirror on this together on Bloomberg.
Good to see all of you. Happy Friday. It's great to be back with you. I want to provide an update on President Trump's actions in the wake of the catastrophic air collision that tragically claimed the lives of 67 people at Reagan National Airport on Wednesday night. Everyone in this White House continues to mourn the victims and keep their friends and families in our thoughts and prayers during this unimaginable time. First, within moments of the collision, the president and his newly appointed team were in immediate communication. The president was briefed on Wednesday evening following the crash, again on Thursday morning, and he has continued to receive updates as recovery efforts continue on the ground. The president, as you know, took time to address the nation yesterday afternoon. To deliver accountability, President Trump swiftly signed a memorandum directing an immediate assessment of the Federal Aviation Administration to ensure the federal government is maintaining the highest personnel and policy aviation safety standards. The memorandum directs the Secretary of Transportation and the FAA Administrator to immediately review all hiring decisions and changes to safety protocols made during the prior 4 years, and to take all necessary corrective actions to achieve uncompromised aviation safety. The review will include a comprehensive assessment and reversal of any deterioration in hiring standards and aviation safety standards and protocols during the previous administration. Aviation safety was addressed by President Trump before this tragic collision even took place. On his second day in office, the president signed a memorandum to immediately stop Biden DEI hiring programs and return to non-discriminatory, merit-based hiring. And in 2018, during President Trump's first term, the Department of Transportation announced it would put an end at that time to use the biological questionnaire that was introduced by the Obama administration, which punished skilled applicants. President Trump has long led on the issue of aviation safety, and he will continue to do so. He will continue to deliver on the promises he made to the American people at record speed. The Senate has already confirmed 8 of President Trump's exceptional cabinet nominees, including most recently Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, as you of course know, EPA Secretary Lee Zeldin, and Interior Secretary Doug Burgum, who is scheduled to be sworn in later today. We expect the Senate to continue quickly confirming the remainder of President Trump's well-qualified nominees in the days ahead. Earlier this week in the East Room, the president proudly signed the Laken-Riley Act into law, surrounded by Laken's loving parents and sister. This common sense bipartisan law mandates the federal detention of illegal aliens who are accused of theft, burglary, assaulting a law enforcement officer, and any crime that causes death or serious bodily injury, like the animal who murdered Laken-Riley in cold blood. This was the first piece of legislation President Trump proudly signed as the 47th president of the United States, and it will guarantee that Laken did not die in vain. As Laken's mother, Allison, tearfully said during the signing event, President Trump said he would secure our borders and that he would never forget about Laken, and he hasn't. He's a man of his word, and we trust that he will fight for the American people. Those are the words of Laken's mother, and we will never forget them. So to help lock up even more criminal illegal aliens, President Trump signed a memorandum this week to detain them at Guantanamo Bay. This action will expand the Migrant Operations Center at Naval Station Guantanamo Bay to full capacity to provide critical extra detention space for high priority criminal illegals. Our brave ICE agents continue to arrest more and more of these types of individuals every day in communities across our country. And I have more updates for you. On January 27th, 2025, ICE Chicago arrested a citizen of Guatemala who has been convicted of solicitation to meet a child, disturbing, and sentenced to 24 months probation. On January 28th, 2025, ICE Atlanta arrested a citizen of South Korea who has been convicted of 9 counts of possession or control of material depicting minors in sexually explicit conduct. On January 28th, ICE New York arrested a Mexican national previously charged by the state of New York for attempted murder and possession of a weapon and assault. And on January 28th, ICE Philly arrested a citizen of Mexico who has been convicted of possession of child pornography. Our message is simple. If you are a criminal illegal alien, you will be arrested and deported. On another important matter, the nation's report card was released this week, and the news is not good. It showed that U.S. students had record low reading comprehension scores last year. It's National School Choice Week, and in part of the president's commitment to education, he just left a roundtable in the Roosevelt Room focused on this issue with leaders from across the country. The national report card showed that 70% of 8th graders were below proficient in reading, and 40% of 4th graders did not even meet the basic reading levels. This is completely unacceptable to the president, and he continues to take aggressive actions to address this education problem in our country. He signed an executive order this week prohibiting federal funding of the indoctrination of our children, including radical gender ideology and critical race theory in the classroom. The president believes American education should focus on cultivating patriotic citizens who are ready for the workforce. And this action will help get schools back on track and defend fundamental parental rights and education. The president also signed a school choice executive order expanding educational freedom and opportunity for families. And in lighter news, but in exciting news, after announcing our briefing room changes on Wednesday, this White House has received more than 10,000 submissions from individuals across the country who are eager to join all of you. We might have to make this room a little bit bigger to do that, who want to participate in our new media seat at a future briefing. So in this seat today, we have the Ruthless podcast. They humbly started by entertaining small audiences on Capitol Hill, but after 4 years, this program has become one of the most influential podcasts in America. They previously reached #1 on the charts and earned over 25 million downloads as they deliver political news with a humorous touch. The hosts are Josh Holmes, Michael Duncan, Comfortably Smug, and the man joining us today, John Ashbrook. So with that, I will take your questions. John, please pick us up.
Thank you very much. Caroline, your first briefing, the media went after this administration for deporting illegal immigrants they claim were not criminal. The question is, do you think they're out of touch with Americans demanding action on our border crisis?
The media out of touch? I think the media certainly is out of touch, and I think that's proven by a number of things, John. #1, there was a New York Times poll that was released prior to President Trump's inauguration by the New York Times, which of course is a legacy media outlet, that showed that
I've been listening to the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt briefing the media from the White House, touching on a number of subjects, and we do expect tariffs may come up in this briefing after Reuters reporting that tariffs on Canada and Mexico will go into effect on March 1st. If she does indeed begin to answer questions in that regard, we will bring you her responses. But obviously, speaking to some of the other events of this week in that briefing so far.
Yeah, we were hoping to get some news out of that conversation. Maybe we will at some point as they get through the new media seats and the disparaging of the mainstream media. It's a pleasure to bring in Susan Delbene, the Congresswoman, of course, representing Washington's 1st District and importantly chair of the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, which is charged with getting Democrats elected to the U.S. House. Congresswoman, it's great to have you back. here on Bloomberg TV and radio. We've been standing by for details on tariffs, whether it's from the press secretary or maybe from Donald Trump himself a bit later on. Reuters is reporting they'll take effect the 1st of March, 25% against Mexico and Canada. Do Democrats have an answer to this, or is Donald Trump exercising his right as the executive to put these into effect?
Well, first of all, it is concerning that he would put in place sweeping tariffs without coming to Congress and talking about the implication of these tariffs. Congress does have an important role to play, and he should be coming to Congress and looking to Congress for approval for any plan that he may have. The fact that none of us know what the plan is also contributing to a lot of uncertainty. And we all know that the number one thing that we heard from the American people across the country was wanting to address costs. And tariffs become a sales tax on American consumers. And so this would raise costs at the pharmacy counter, at the grocery store, at the gas station. So it's very concerning that policy would be in place that would raise costs for American consumers. And let's be clear, it could start the beginning of a trade war. There will be retaliation for sweeping tariffs, and that impacts our small businesses, our farmers, and jobs right here in the U.S.
Well, he may not be coming to Congress on the issue of tariffs, but he is going to be coming to Congress on tax policy. Congresswoman, you of course sit on the Ways and Means Committee, and one of his other arguments in favor of tariffs is that it is supplemental revenue. It'll help offset lower taxes elsewhere. Does the math work on that for you?
Well, these are taxes that are be paid for by American consumers. Prices go up. Economist after economist has talked about the impact that sweeping tariffs would have on American consumers, on our small businesses. And
the United States needs more manufacturing domestically. The only way to do that is to force products to be made here. So in the short term, and it's still debatable if it's even going to be inflationary, but in the short term, it might be inflationary. But in the long term, there's going to be more innovation, because innovation is through manufacturing. Innovation is not through design only. Innovation is through design and manufacturing. It's an and statement, not an or. So you got to innovate and you got to manufacture. And when you have manufacturing and you have a robust economy, what happens is you have economic clusters. America would be stronger by increasing its manufacturing capability. But these transnational capitalists, all they care about is their short-term return, and they don't care about you. They don't care about the true price of goods and services. They don't care. Actually, they want it to be higher because inflation actually brings up the stock market, and most of their wealth is in the stock market. Manufacturing is where it's at. You got to build up manufacturing.
Across the country, and it's Congress's role to decide where our taxpayer dollars go. So the president cannot be in a position where he thinks he unilaterally can decide to prevent those dollars from going out. He really was trying to put in place a one-man shutdown of our government. There were broad implications of what it meant. I heard from constituents all over huge concerns about resources that people were depending on being cut off, on healthcare, support for our community members. There's incredible concern, but this is Congress's decision. The president doesn't have the right to withhold those funds.
Well, and as we talk about Hakeem Jeffries and his leadership in the House, Congresswoman, there's also a question of leadership in the party as a whole. Tomorrow, a new DNC chair will be selected. It's happening not very far from where Joe and I are now at the National Harbor in Maryland. Is there someone you would like to see in that role, to work with in that role as head of DCCC? And is that person now going to be the leader of the party?
Well, there's great candidates running, so that will be a decision that's made by all the folks who are voting in that election. But definitely the DNC is an important partner. Our role and my role is to make sure that we take back the majority in the House. Very critically important, so that we have folks who are going to stand up for American families, stand up to make sure that we're focused on lowering costs and addressing the issues that our communities are seeing, and stand up to an administration that actually feels like they don't have to work for Congress. We're a co-equal branch, and it's important for us to continue to speak loudly about the important role that Congress plays in supporting the needs of the American people. So there will be an election tomorrow. We'll see. I look forward to working with whoever is elected to chair the DNC.
All right, Congresswoman, thank you so much for your time and for joining us today. That's the Democratic Congresswoman from Washington, Susan Delbene, also chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. And we should point out the White House press briefing is still ongoing. Caroline Leavitt has answered questions regarding a number of things, including what she spoke to right off the top, which was the deadly mid-air collision that happened at DCA yesterday, and was facing questions once again about the accusations Donald Trump and others were making that DEI hiring practices at the FAA may have had something to do with that. To this point, we have no evidence to substantiate those claims, and we are expecting that we'll hear from the actual investigators looking into the cause of the crash. The NTSB will have another briefing this afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern time.
Yeah, we're all hungry for information here. Some of the reports, though, have been frustrating, realizing that 2 of National Airport's air traffic controllers were doing double duty on Wednesday night.
And one headline I do want to mention from the briefing regarding Caroline Leavitt, we've been reporting on this Reuters report. She is pushing back against it, saying the March 1st tariff deadline is false. Reiterating.
What?
Tomorrow, Joe, these 25% tariffs would be going into effect.
Let's see if we get something more official today.
Yeah, I guess we will. In the meantime, while we await further confirmation on that, as she's now discussing 10% tariffs on China, we want to check in on what's happening in real time at Reagan National Airport as we follow really 2 important stories here from Washington.
You know what's
State.
amazing with
Tyler
Bloomberg
Kendall.
when they talk to a Democrat or a Democratic sympathizer, they never fact check. You notice that?
NTSB investigator. Oh, I'll toss it back to you.
Tyler, you can keep going. We'd like to hear what's happening at the airport. Tyler Kendall, what's the latest that you're hearing today at Reagan National?
Oh, no problem. Sorry, I thought we were heading back in to the briefing there. But as I was saying, absolutely critical that these recording devices were recovered. One, that voice recorder that, as Alan Deal told you last hour, that will help investigators kind of piece together exactly what happened up to the moment of the crash, but also you will get hard data from that, including the speed and the elevation becoming absolutely critical as this investigation moves forward. We know that here at DCA, there's about a 200-foot ceiling for helicopters to operate in and around this area. Now, one official briefed on the investigation has confirmed to Bloomberg News that it does appear that a helicopter was operating above that ceiling, according to flight tracking data cited by Bloomberg. It appears that that helicopter was at about 300 feet. So again, above that ceiling. This is a point that President Trump pointed out in a Truth Social post earlier today, and also was originally floated by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Now, Hegseth also confirming that the Pentagon is conducting their own investigation into this. Remember, Joe Mankiewicz, this was considered to be a routine training mission. One Army official telling reporters yesterday that these pilots were considered to be experienced pilots. The lead pilot in that helicopter had about 1,000 hours of training under his belt. That is considered to be a significant amount of time when you take into account that helicopters often aren't in the air for too long, normally about 2 hours at max.
All right, Tyler, we do appreciate it very much, and we'll stay close to Tyler Kendall throughout the day as we learn more about what's happening at Reagan National Airport with a series of developments there as they close down that low altitude corridor that helicopters have been using in that area. Kaylee, the White House making news, as you just mentioned, about tariffs, Canada and Mexico, 25%, China at 10%. It's right ahead on the terminal.
Yeah, to directly quote the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, she said she saw the reporting from Reuters around a March 1st deadline, the idea that this would be bumped back. She says it is false, that she was just with the president in the Oval Office and can confirm that tomorrow, the February 1st deadline that President Trump put into place with a statement several weeks ago continues. So I guess that's where we stand at this moment. We could hear from Donald Trump himself on this later today. He is expected to be signing executive orders this afternoon, and will be
Right.
traveling from Joint Base Andrews down to Florida and Mar-a-Lago, another opportunity for him to potentially address the cameras.
Yeah, this is all anecdotal. We have no paper on this and there's nothing official. So we're just trying to follow the verbal cues here from the press secretary reporting that's coming out of the White
You know
House.
what's
If we can
amazing is
bring in-
Bloomberg is
yeah.
having some difficulties in broadcasting, but not just that. This news, a reversal where the March 1st tariff would be going into effect and now it's going back to February 1st, is definitely moving the markets. Now the VIX is elevated, it's trading at 15.34. And the Euro USD is now reversed its gain. Bitcoin right now is trading lower. And the USD Japanese yen is reversed. And now the US dollar is strengthening. Oil went up a little bit with this reversal. And I don't know why Bloomberg is having a problem with its transmission. It's strange.
Vote have talked about. Russell Vogt said Donald Trump will make impoundment great again. They are trying to ensure.
All right,
that
I'm gonna go to the actual press. The
Economic boom, just like we saw in our first term.
It has a White House sound and you.
Fox Business,
Yes,
yes.
two days ago. Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, said today that if the U.S. imposes tariffs, he will respond and he will not relent until the tariffs are removed. Are we seeing the start of the trade war with him?
I don't think so. I think the president is going to implement those tariffs tomorrow, and he will respond to Mr. Trudeau's comments in due time, I am sure.
What type of things have to happen? What does the administration need to see in order to avoid those tariffs?
Well, the tariffs are incoming tomorrow on Canada. And the reason for that is because both Canada and Mexico have allowed an unprecedented invasion of illegal fentanyl that is killing American citizens and also illegal immigrants into our country. In fact, I have more language for you right here. Canada, Mexico, and China, which, as I mentioned, President Trump will implement a 10% tariff on China, have all enabled illegal drugs to pour into America. The amount of fentanyl that has been seized at the southern border in the last 2 years alone has the potential to kill tens of millions of Americans. And so the president is intent on doing this. And I think Justin Trudeau would be wise to talk to President Trump directly before pushing outlandish comments like that to the media.
Damn.
You're interrupting your colleague, but sure. I call her Lindsay.
The president this morning said the Blackout helicopter was flying too high. I'm wondering if he's basing that on what he learned from investigators, and if you could offer a little bit more of a window into how he is keeping abreast of this investigation.
Sure.
Is the NTSB briefing him separately? Is he meeting in the Situation Room? You just sort of offer a window.
Yeah, the president based that statement on truth because it is truth and it's fact, and it was relayed to him by the authorities who are overseeing the investigation into this horrific plane collision. And the president, as I said in my opening remarks, continues to be briefed on the collision by everybody across his cabinet, the Secretary of Transportation, the Secretary of Defense, the NTSB, who the commissioner there was in the Oval Office with him yesterday. Lindsay. Lindsay, go ahead. Lindsay, go ahead. Thank you.
The CIA actually revealed that they do also believe that COVID-19 was from a lab leak in Wuhan, China. How is the president planning on responding to this additional intel from the CIA, and will it impact how he responds to the tariffs?
Yeah, kudos to John Ratcliffe for revealing that truth and that fact to the American people. Many years too late, the Biden administration had a chance to let the American people know the truth about that, and for some reason, they chose not to. I also would just like to point out that several years ago, when I was working in this press shop and President Trump would take to this podium to brief the American people on COVID-19, he suggested that COVID very well may have came from a lab in Wuhan, China. And many members in this very room mocked him for that, said he was spewing conspiracy theories. He was not. We now know that to be the confirmable truth. It took many years for it to come out, but the president was right in this instance again. Sure.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about Secretary Rubio's trip to Panama.
But they're only willing to tell you that only the CCP part of it. It's a USA CCP virus. Trust me on this.
Rubio's conversations with President Trump about the Panama Canal. I have been present for President Trump's own thoughts on the Panama Canal, and he's all seen them as well in his public statements that he has shown. He believes it's unacceptable that the canal is essentially run by the Chinese Communist Party. If you look at both ends of the canal, massive Chinese Communist Party linked companies run the canal. That's unfair to the American people, many of whom lost their lives many years ago building this canal. The American taxpayers are paying millions of dollars for the canal, and the president believes it's in our national interest as a nation for Secretary Rubio to go there and begin these discussions, and that's exactly why he's doing that. Sure.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Is the United States in the process of pulling out of Syria militarily? Because the president wanted to do that in his first term as well, and he had a lot of pushback from the Pentagon and Congress. And based on what he said yesterday, he's still considering doing that in a short time.
The president was asked and answered this question yesterday, and he, as the commander-in-chief of the United States military, reserves the right to review troop deployments overseas at any point in time.
Is that a topic right now?
Yes.
Thank you. Two questions. So we now know that the staffing was not normal at the air traffic tower, and so with the government reviewing the hiring of new federal workers and offering buyouts, are you not afraid that more incidents of different kinds could happen with less staffing in different agencies?
Well, the president is intent on ensuring that we are increasing staffing at these agencies, and that's why he signed a very strong executive order on his second day in office, immediately terminating DEI hiring practices at the FAA. He also, following the tragic crash, as you all know, in the Oval Office yesterday, signed a memorandum directing an immediate assessment of the FAA to ensure the federal government is maintaining.
Equities are now selling off, and the VIX is starting to increase.
Years of studying aviation, and you graduate from school and you're an air traffic controller based on skill and merit, and then you apply for a job and you're forced to fill out a biographical questionnaire asking you the color of your skin and asking you where you're from in details that aren't relevant at all to the job description. I think that deteriorates the morale of people in this industry, and if you talk to people in this industry, they'll tell you that. In fact, many of them filed a lawsuit against the FAA a couple of years ago under Joe Biden's administration because they were denied positions because of this DEI hiring practice that was putting identity politics over merit and skills. That's unacceptable, and I think just to put a fine point on this, because this is the third or fourth question I've answered on this subject, when you are flying on an airplane with your loved ones, which every one of us in this room has, do you pray that your plane lands safely and gets you to your destination, or do you pray that the pilot has a certain skin color? I think we all know the answer to that question, and as President Trump said yesterday, it's common sense. Rob Curley.
Yeah, I'd just like to follow up on that last question. Has there been any sort of assurance from the FAA that they will immediately improve staffing levels? Keep giving the reports of not normal staffing levels on those.
Oh, absolutely. You had Secretary Duffy here yesterday at the White House at this podium saying that he is on it, and we can all trust that he definitely will be. John Decker.
Thanks a lot, Carol.
Yes, I did.
Thank you very
As
much.
long as your name's still John Decker.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. The president's meeting today with the founder and CEO of NVIDIA. What is that meeting concerning, and who saw that meeting?
I don't have details on this. It's a private meeting. It will take place at 2:30 p.m. I'll try to get there in time, and I can let you know after. How's that?
On Guantanamo Bay, can you give more details about setting up that detention facility at Gitmo? How will that come about? What's the timing in terms of standing it up? And of course, this has happened before during the Clinton administration.
That's right.
Detainees of Cuban and Haitian descent were both detained at Guantanamo. Are you looking at that model in setting up this detention facility?
Secretary Hegseth, I believe, was on television this morning answering this question, and he said that the Department of Defense is already on it. He has directed his agency to ensure that Gitmo is increasing their capacity for beds. And that's exactly what President Trump's executive order did. It directed Secretary Hegseth and also Secretary Noem to expand the Migrant Operations Center at the Naval Station to provide for this extra detention space. And as Secretary Hegseth confirmed this morning, that operation is underway. Sure. Caroline, on the tariffs, can you clarify whether those will actually be going into effect tomorrow or whether there might be some lead time?
Yes.
And are those, they will be going into effect?
Correct.
And are those meant to be in place long-term, or is there a scenario in which Canada, Mexico, and China can offer concessions and then they would be removed? At this point, the president has made it very clear those tariffs are going to be implemented and in effect. If the president at any time decides to roll back those tariffs, I'll leave it to him to make that decision, but starting tomorrow, those tariffs will be in place. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline.
Yes.
Can you confirm a report by our friends at the Daily Mail that British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is going to be visiting the White House in February? And also, if I may, do you have any more details on Netanyahu's visit here next week?
Sure. I have not seen that report about the Prime Minister. I can go check back with our friends at the National Security Council and get back to you on that. I can confirm that Prime Minister Netanyahu will be here on Tuesday, February 4th, for a working meeting and visit with the President. And I'm sure you will all be here, very excited to cover that visit. Sure. Daniel. You're welcome.
Specifically, obviously, why does the president feel like that's the best location or a good location to make sure that Americans are safe from violent, illegal, migrant crime?
Well, it's a really good question, and the memorandum that he signed, the order that he signed, builds on his previous executive actions, obviously, to secure our southern border and deport illegal criminals from the interior of our country. We know that we have an issue with detention space here in the interior, which is a big reason why Congress needs to pass this reconciliation package as quickly as possible to ensure that DHS and ICE have the funding they need to detain these individuals that the administration is very swiftly rounding up and deporting, arresting and deporting these illegal immigrant criminals. And so the president feels it's an appropriate place. Taxpayers are already funding it. The space is there. Why not use it? And the Secretary of Defense, as I said, is working on that as we speak. Sure. Yes.
Thank you so much for having me here to answer your question. So I want to talk more about the success that ICE is having finding these violent criminal aliens, some of the big sexual predators. But my friend Ben Burkholm reports that the Chicago mayor and the Illinois governor are preventing ICE agents from going into jails and prisons to enforce detainers against illegal aliens. In Maryland, the Attorney General has also put out a memo hindering local police cooperation with ICE. Does the administration have any comment on leftist state and local officials defying ICE and Trump's deportation efforts?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that Democrat officials in these cities who have been completely overrun and overwhelmed by illegal immigrant criminals would refuse support and help to cure this problem that has especially taken over their cities. I guess they don't want to admit they've been wrong with their sanctuary city policies. I'm not sure. You'll have to ask them about their intentions, but they would be very wise to comply with this administration because this administration is hell-bent on enforcing our nation's immigration laws. And this administration will continue to arrest and detain and deport illegal migrant criminals. And what we won't do is defy our nation's immigration laws like the previous administration, who have these orders of removal on illegal immigrants across the country and were refusing to execute on them. We will continue to remove illegal criminals from our nation's interior.
Are the sanctuary city leaders, are they violating law?
I would certainly think so. I'd have to check back on which specific law they're violating, but certainly if they're not enforcing our nation's immigration law, sounds like they are breaking the law. And I would also add that their constituents don't approve of that. You've seen residents in Chicago show up at their city council meetings infuriated with their leadership in that city because they are working very hard to provide for their families. They want public safety and law and order, and their officials have abandoned those very basic American principles in these cities. And the American people want law and order. It's, again, an overwhelmingly popular policy to deport illegal criminals from our nation's interior, and this administration will continue to affect that goal.
Question on Colombia. We just interviewed Colombian President Gustavo Petro, and he insisted that he's not going to take any Colombian deportees from the U.S. if they arrive in South America handcuffed. How does the administration respond to that?
When did the Colombian president make those remarks?
For an interview with us at the United States.
Well, I will share those with the president of the United States, and I will get back to you on his response.
What happens if Nicolas Maduro?
Caroline, there are more than 150,000 disabled Americans who are working today. The president talked a lot yesterday about hiring the best and the brightest
to work in the federal government. Safety aside, does he believe that disabled people do have a place to work in the federal government? And does he also support the current protections for disabled people working in private sector as well?
The president has made it very clear that this is a common sense solution to solving some of the problems that we have seen at the Federal Aviation Administration, and also when it comes to many of the federal agencies across our government. People should not be hired based on their disabilities, based on their skin color, their gender, their race. None of that matters. What matters to this president and this administration is how well you can do your job, and the American people agree with that sentiment. So it's about competence, skill, and merit. And so the president is focused on ensuring that the most competent individuals, the best and the brightest in this country, are in positions in this federal government, especially when it comes to public safety. Can't overemphasize the importance of those jobs.
On the question before, President Trump is putting China accountable on fentanyl by ranking as terrorists. So how is President Trump planning to hold China accountable on COVID origins?
I haven't spoken to the president about the COVID origins specifically in regards to any actions he may or may not take when it comes to China. But as I have previewed quite a few times today, he will be implementing a 10% tariff on China tomorrow. Sure.
Has the president made up his mind about a timeline for tariffs on the EU?
No, he has not.
Will it be a one-size-fits-all, or will it be differentiated among the governments?
I won't get ahead of the president on tariffs when it comes to the European Union. What I can tell you again is that the president will be implementing 25% on Canada, 25% on Mexico, 10% on China tomorrow for the reasons that I have repeatedly laid out in this briefing. Newsmax, go ahead. Yes. No, go ahead. The gentleman behind you.
James Rose.
Yes, James. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Two quick questions on foreign policy, and then one very long and tedious and ponderous Rosen question thereafter. First, on Iran, we've heard very little about the president's forthcoming Iran policy, besides his determination to prevent that nation from achieving a nuclear weapons capability. Is it the president's objective, short of the use of U.S. military force, to use the broad array of his powers to try to hasten the end of the Iranian regime?
I think the president has actually made his position on Iran very clear. And he made that clear when there were the negotiations about the ceasefire, which we know obviously is now in place, and the deadline on that ceasefire has continued. He said that Hamas and Iranian-backed terrorists would have hell to pay if that ceasefire didn't move forward, and then quickly thereafter it did. I also do have news on the hostage front, which I'm very surprised nobody asked about this, because it is a big news story. And the White House applauds the release of 8 additional hostages from Hamas captivity, thanks to the ceasefire deal secured by President Trump. 3 Israeli and 5 Thai nationals are being reunited with their families and their loved ones after being held in unspeakable conditions for over 15 months. And the president remains committed to the release of all remaining hostages, and they should have never been taken by the brutal terrorist group Hamas in the first place. And I think President Trump's working meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister next week emphasizes his continued support for Israel and ensuring that brutal terrorists in that region have hell to pay. Sure.
Can I just finish with 2 questions?
Sure.
I know you want the long, ponderous Rosen one. But first, on the Grinnell trip, as you know, under the previous administration, the U.S. recognized the opposition candidate in last year's elections, Edmundo Gonzalez, now exiled, as the legitimate president of Venezuela. Does the president's dispatching of Ambassador Grinnell to negotiate directly with President Maduro today mean that the U.S. now officially recognizes President Maduro as the legitimate president of Venezuela?
Absolutely not. As I made it very clear, former ambassador and special envoy Rick Grinnell is going to Venezuela with 2 very clear
I want to go to
directions.
Canada's
Make sure that-
Trudeau, what he's saying, because this might be tied to the tariff issue.
But reasonable, immediate response.
Radical Haynes joining us now from Washington, D.C. Not really a surprise that these tariffs are coming into play, because they were promised by Donald Trump on the campaign. The timing is interesting because there was speculation it might be delayed a little bit.
All right,
What more
all
do you
right.
mean?
All right, I'm just going back to the press.
Well, not surprising, but it is somewhat breaking news because we just got our first confirmation from the White House press secretary.
Cabinet officer. It was the same expletive that I saw him use in Eastern in 2020 when he famously held up the Trump acquitted headline. My question is, if you could shed any light for us on how the president perceives his use of public profanity, which is a practice that certainly sets him apart from all of his predecessors. Does he regard it as an effective communications device, part of his appeal, or is it something that he lapses into inadvertently, perhaps in times of frustration and later regrets?
I think one of the things that the American people love most about this president is that he often says what they are thinking, but sometimes lack the courage to say themselves. And I think yesterday at this podium, you heard President Trump express great frustration, perhaps even anger, with the previous administration's policies, many of which have led to the crises that our country is currently facing and that this president is focused on fixing. Thank you guys very much. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
And to White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt take questions from the reporters. As they step forward, we are also going to step away for a quick 2-minute break. On the other side, more of today's top stories. Stay with us.
Alrighty. All right, before we go to Bloomberg or Al Jazeera, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the NAD Plus. I've added this to my stack. Why? Because NAD Plus boosts up your energy levels, but also NAD Plus helps to repair your DNA damage for your mitochondria and for your DNA that's in the nucleus of your cell. So it's a dual purpose product. You're getting higher energy levels, repairing your DNA, and it's neuroprotective. When you get older, taking supplements that help with your neurons is really important. I can't tell you this enough. Boost up your immune system and protect your neurons. Because guess what? When you do that, your geriatric years are going to be a lot better. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the NAD Plus. Also, I've added to my store ubiquinol. I've been taking CoQ10 for a long time. All right, ubiquinol is the highest bioavailable CoQ10 that you can get. So getting this supplement from my store is the highest bioavailable CoQ10 that you can buy. All right. What does ubiquinol do? It helps to boost up your energy levels, helps to improve the health of your mitochondria. It's an antioxidant, so it's going to soak up free radicals. It's synergistic with C60. And ubiquinol protects neurons, just like NAD+. So it's stackable with NAD+, just in a different way. It's protecting your neurons in a different way. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the ubiquinol, especially when you're 40 plus. Taking supplements that boost up your mitochondria and protecting your neurons are really, really important. And like I said, it's stackable with C60. C60 is a very potent antioxidant. You can get it in a 2-ounce, a 4-ounce, or an 8-ounce configuration on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can get it in avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, or MCT coconut oil. C60 has to be suspended in a lipid so you can absorb it. It absorbs better on an empty stomach. And if you work out, take it before your workout to soak up the free radicals. You'll recover quicker. You'll notice that your recovery time is quicker. All right, so take it every day. Take a teaspoon a day. Take it every day. It'll soak up those free radicals, boost up the health of your mitochondria. You'll have more energy. And by having more energy, your cells and your tissue will perform better. That means that your glands and your organs will perform better. So that means that you're going to be improving your endocrine system, you're going to be improving your immune system, and your other bodily systems. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Soak up those free radicals. It's really important. It'll slow down the aging process and help with your immune system. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the C60 in the 2-ounce, the 4-ounce, or the 8-ounce configuration. Make sure you use discount 5, all caps, discount 5, you get $5 off. If you buy a longevity box or an anti-aging box, I have assembled supplements at different price points targeting different things for the anti-aging or the longevity boxes at a discount compared to buying these products individually on my store. On top of that, you can type in the discount 5 on any order. So I've done everything I can to show you how to stack, how to get these high quality supplements at different price points. Just follow my lead. Your health will improve. You can mitigate cardiovascular disease. You can mitigate diabetes. You can mitigate neurological diseases, especially that are age-related. How? Proper supplementation and a holistic approach. That is proper diet, proper exercise, stretching. Balancing exercise is super important to activate your neurons. Filtering your water, making sure that the foods that you eat are higher quality foods. Doing resistance training, doing cardiovascular training, but not too much. Looking at the 4 pillars: neutralize pathogens, bring down free radicals, bring down inflammation, and boost up energy levels and rev up your metabolism. These things that you do at a holistic approach are radically going to change your life. So take my advice or don't take my advice. The bottom line is, I'm right.
In the U.S., in free market economies, demand actually sets the price, demand and production. OPEC's a little different in that they're a cartel, and they can snap their fingers and set the price, or they can set the production number. They are important players in the marketplace. But that being said, they do have to drive their own economies, and they're heavily dependent upon the price of oil. Sure. So we'll see what happens over the course of the next few weeks.
How long will it take to feel the impact of lifting the ban on LNG exports?
I think it's going to be fairly immediate. I would imagine the U.S. Department of Energy will probably start approving some of the pending applications for export authorization very, very quickly. And I know that there are several projects that were somewhat halted by this pause, and I think you'll see them speed up construction really quickly. So my expectation would be within the next year or two, you'll start to see again this rise in the exports of LNG.
And you see building of pipelines in that side?
Yes, and that's what's really the critical factor here. It's getting the product to market. As we just talked about, we know how to produce oil here in the United States. We know how to produce gas. We can make electrons to drive data centers and everything else. Our challenge in this country has been getting that product to the actual market, putting the electricity to the load through transmission and distribution, and getting those gas molecules to the open ocean, building pipelines.
Well, so when we consider this kind of wider energy picture, obviously we all had a bit of a reset perhaps, or there was a reset in the markets on Monday because of DeepSeek about what kind of energy capacity may actually be needed to fuel artificial intelligence, whether or not it's less than expected. Have you retooled your thinking around that, Carol? Are you expecting that there still is going to be an incredibly pointed increase in demand due to all of these data centers and the facilitation of this technology?
Yeah, the demand's coming. With or without AI, we are
With or
short.
without DeepSeak?
Yeah, with or without DeepSeek and with or without AI, we are short on electrons here in the United States.
We are, for sure. Our energy grid has many problems. One is we don't have enough stations, enough energy pumping into the grid. We need to harden the grid, and we need to be able to have distribution centers on the coasts to be able to export our energy, especially LNG. All right. We have a lot of energy. And when we use and we produce, that means that the prices are going to go down. And if we export it out, we're going to have a surplus of funds coming in to be able to fund our deficit and pay down the debt. And when we do that, if we do it properly, we're actually going to have less interest payments over time.
We do, because we need those electrons. But in the long run, it's going to be newer technologies, small modular, advanced reactors, perhaps even fusion energy at some point in our lifetimes.
Well, and as we consider this whole equation, it's all going to be inherited by Chris Wright, presumably, who's passed some hurdles in the Senate. He could be confirmed to be the new Secretary of Energy, your old job, within the day or the days to come. What would your advice be to him on navigating the environment we are currently in? Obviously, he's very familiar with the energy industry.
He's very familiar. This is not going to be new to him. And that's why I think he's such an incredible choice to be the next Secretary, 17th U.S. Secretary of Energy. Chris has got a great background, graduated from MIT. He knows a lot about nuclear power. He served on the board with Sam Altman at Oklo, which is a small modular reactor or an advanced reactor company based out west. He's also got an incredible history in the oil and gas industry, as well as, and not many people know this, in the wind industry. So he knows a lot about energy production, and I'm excited about his leadership of that department. It's a fantastic place.
Dan Brea just dropped fusion on us. In our lifetimes? Is that when in our lifetimes?
I hope so.
Are you being serious, or this is blue sky time?
It's a little bit of blue sky, but I do hope it happens. I mean, just think about the possibilities. Think about the impact of that. You know, we just talked about several forms of energy: oil, natural gas, wind production. If we can bring the sun to Earth, and that's what fusion energy is.
Yeah.
We've made all of that obsolete.
Imagine.
All of it obsolete.
Can you get that done in the next 4 years?
I'll try.
We appreciate you joining us here in our GC studio. Dan Brea, the former U.S. Secretary of Energy during the first Trump administration, now President and CEO of the Edison Electric Institute. Appreciate you being here on Bloomberg TV and radio, especially as we consider the potential ramifications of the news we are dealing with today as we await confirmation or maybe some paperwork from President Trump around 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico.
Yeah, and we'll keep tabs on what's happening at the White House. He's going to be sitting down with Jensen Huang about 2:30 Eastern time. We'll see if any of that is public. We're told it's a private meeting, according to the press secretary. I still feel like there's got to be a camera around there somewhere for this important confab, and whether that might include a conversation about export controls. Whatever we learn, we'll have it for you coming up at 5 p.m. Eastern here on Balance of Power.
Yep, that'll be the late edition. In the meantime, Bloomberg Business.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost is a great supplement. It's a superfood, basically. You can take it for your breakfast or for your lunch. It's a great way to lose weight, but it has 68 nutrients. It has a gigantic, profile of the nutrients here. Just go to my store, look at the label. It's pretty comprehensive, all right? Take it every day. There's a scooper. Take 1 scooper a day, mix it with soft foods like hummus or yogurt. Some people mix it with cereal or a smoothie. You can mix it with milk, or you can, do just filtered water, or a combo of all these. But take it for breakfast or lunch, and what you'll notice is that your energy levels will really go up after about 2 days. You'll notice this, and and you're fueling your body with some really good nutrients here. All right, and again, I've added that this is my 4th pillar to the core of health for supplementation. So the Boomer Boost is the main pillar to boost up that metabolism and those energy levels. All right, you'll be able to lose weight if you do this. All right, and you're going to have higher energy levels, and you're going to feel healthier. And then with higher energy levels, then you should start doing a little bit of resistance training, a little bit of cardio, and you're really going to supercharge your body. You're going to get those endorphins being produced. You're going to be boosting up your ATP. A lot of systems are going to start coming online for your body that are very positive. Boomer Boost also helps with brain function and brain health, helps with your muscles, and helps with your cardiovascular system. It boosts up your energy levels and your metabolism. So it's a win-win for you by taking this. Now, it works even better if you couple it with barley. Now, there's 2 types of barley that I have. I have the Gladiator barley, which is really focused on gaining strength. All right. So this is great for athletes or people that are older that, want to, stay healthy and build up muscle mass and strength. Really important. you know, as an anti-aging protocol, really important. So this really helps with building up strength. It works really well with coupling it with the Boomer Boost. You can take it separately. It's a powder. It's a high density protein. It has just a, you know, you take a few small scoops per day, mix it with the Boomer Booster separately in soft foods or filtered water or smoothie, whatever, and take it every day. All right. Again, this is high density protein. So you can lose weight by using this as a meal. Now, the way you want to do that is just like a soft food, like a yogurt or hummus or something is probably the best way to do it. And then mix it with the Boomer Boost. And then some people also mix it with the collagen and the lignins and all this, with all the powders and the probiotic. But taking the Boomer Boost and taking the Gladiator Barley together will really supercharge this superfood, okay? And you'll lose weight, and you're going to control your diabetes, or you're going to control your blood glucose levels, and you're going to get healthier, all right? And you're going to see this health change in you in a short amount of time, all right? And you're going to probably save money, because I'm sure that your breakfast and lunch is more expensive than 1 scoop of this a day, and, you know, maybe 3 or 4 scoops of this a day, small scoops of the barley, because it's high density barley. And this is probably way healthier than anything that you're taking for lunch or breakfast. Or you can also take the heirloom barley. Now, both the Gladiator barley and the heirloom barley bring down inflammation, detoxify your body, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. But the Gladiator barley is more focused on building up that strength, all right? But both are very high quality, and both are going to help with the A1C levels. But the Gladiator barley will help with the A1C levels with Boomer Boost more, okay? So this is a great way to do, you know, you can take it separately. You can take the heirloom barley or the Gladiator barley separately. And if you work out, these are great protein, you know, workout supplements, right? But if you're older and you're not, you know, an athlete, right, taking this stuff is really going to supercharge your body. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Boomer Boost, the Gladiator barley, or the heirloom barley. You can buy them separately, or you can buy the Longevity Boost box. And that Longevity Boost box is designed to be cheaper. If you buy it, it's you get the Boomer Boost and your choice of Gladiator barley or the heirloom barley. All right. And by having it at a lower price point, you're getting 2 great supplements, the Boomer Boost and the barley. You're getting it at a discount, and you can apply the discount 5 on top of that. So I've done everything I can to tell you how to stack this stuff, how to reduce diabetes, how to reduce cardiovascular disease, how to improve your brain health, how to get healthy, how to improve your immune system. If you listen to all of the items that I talked about and pick and choose and stack, you're going to radically change your health. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I've been broadcasting for, it looks like 4 hours and 30 minutes, 39 minutes or so. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Again, the ones that are on X Spaces, thank you for listening. For the ones that are viewing in real time on my website, on Rumble, or on YouTube, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Don't be afraid to do a call-in, you know, in the next show to ask questions. And just a reminder, it's planned that I do a show with John Hogue on Sunday. I have to set that all up now so we can, you know, send out the emails and stuff. But there's going to be a call-in, so there will be an X Spaces that you can listen to and do a call-in. I'll also be live streaming it on YouTube. So stay tuned. That's at 10 o'clock p.m. New York time on Sunday. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.